Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Bibb County Commission Committee of the Whole meeting. Today is Tuesday, July 13th, and the time is approximately 9:01. We welcome everyone here today. We do have quite a busy agenda. We want to start off with a couple of easy things, we hope. The first one is going to be, we do have a quorum here. Is that correct? Correct. Okay, we have a quorum. We're ready to begin business. We have the minutes from the Committee of the Whole from June the 22nd, 2021. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Lucas. Any discussion in regards to that motion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Will be sent to consent agenda. Commissioner Watkins?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I know we got a long agenda today, but I did want to offer a few items to be added to the agenda. Three actually. One to spend $1 million of ARP funds over 2 years to the Loaves and Fishes organization. A second item, $1 million over 2 years to the Daybreak organization to support homelessness, and $260,000 to be added from the Parks and Beautification line item to support mowing and maintenance of our right-of-ways.
Okay. We have three items that are suggested to be added to the menus. To the agenda. We'll take each of those one at a time to vote for them. As we recall, there's 5 votes to add an item to the agenda. The first item appeared to be adding an item to the agenda on the ARP, American Rescue Plan, for funding. Is that $1 million Loaves and Fishes?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I have it in writing as well.
Okay, and that is, we've got these items here for everyone to review. That is Commissioner Watkins' motion to add to the agenda. Can we get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Bronson, Commissioner Lucas. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of adding those to the agenda, please say aye. Opposed? Okay, that motion fails. We'll move on to the second item. The second item is Daybreak, ARP money. Commissioner Watkins would like to add that $1 million to Daybreak, the ARP funds, same provisions as before. That's his motion. Can we get a second? A second by Commissioner Bronson. Okay. Got a motion and second. All those in favor of adding that item to the agenda, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion does not carry. 4 votes. Move on to the final item. That item is to add an item to the agenda concerning cutting of right-of-ways, approximately $260,000, not from the ARP money, but from the general fund. Public Works? Public Works. That's Commissioner Watkins' motion. Can I get a second? Commissioner Lucas would like to second that.
And I just want to add that, again, I'm asking this to be added to the agenda for further discussion, but again, I don't know if anyone has looked outside of our right-of-ways, but they are overgrown, I mean, in some instances by many feet, in places where there should be no grass. Earlier in the year, we came with a solution, and that was shot down in favor of spraying spray. We've been doing the spray program now for, I think, a month or two, and that's not yielding any results. In the name of beautification of our city, I'm asking that we find a way to use outside contractors who've already submitted RFP responses to us to do the work for a price that even our Public Works Department has agreed is reasonable for what it costs to do the work the right way.
Okay. I have spoken with Commissioner Watkins about this. This is not a ARP add-on or expense. This is coming out of the $1 million that we already appropriated. I think that would be appropriate in this situation. Personally, I would be in favor of that, and I've told him I would support the same. So at this time, we do have a motion by Commissioner Watkins. Can we get a second on that motion? Second by Commissioner Lucas again. Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, it will take 5 votes, which means everyone in attendance here now to support that. And likewise, I would be in favor of that since it's not ARP money. It's general funding money that we've already set aside. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be added to the agenda. Commissioner Watkins. We're going to move on to introduction of new county attorney. Michael, would you like to approach the Bench, introduce our new hiree. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I'm delighted to introduce Adriana Beavers, who's joined our office as an Assistant County Attorney as of last week. Ms. Beavers comes to us having just completed a clerkship with Chief Judge John Simpson of the Coweta Judicial Circuit. And before that, she was in law school. Before that, she was working at Kennesaw State University, where she finished her master's degree in biology and was working as a student teacher as well. So we're delighted to have her with the office and look forward to working with you. Can I say hi?
Good morning, Commission members, Mayor Miller, and Mayor Pro Tem Clark. I'm excited to be a part of the Macon-Bibb County Government team, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
I just wanted to say, in the short time she's already been in the office, she's done an outstanding job, and the IQ in the office has already gone up about 10 points. That's right.
I think the women are taking over there, Commissioner Lucas. Thank you, Attorney McNeil, for that and introducing her. She has been hard at work this week, and she's been making her rounds. We appreciate her hard work so far. This time, we're going to move on to new alcohol beverage licenses. The new alcohol beverage licenses. The first item on the agenda is a new alcohol beverage license for Aladdin Food Management, LLC, located at 100 University Parkway, Macon, Georgia, 31201. That's my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Lucas. Just briefly on this, if you'll notice, this is Middle Georgia State University. There, they have a food and beverage licensee at that location. Occasionally, they do have events where they serve alcohol at. This is their renewal on that with the company they're using, and they've met all the standards and completed all the paperwork. Any questions in regards to that? Sue, our attorney. Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. We're going to move on to the next item, which is a new alcohol beverage license for Tom's Mart located at 1225 Gray Highway, Macon, Georgia. This particular item, our recommendation is going to be a denial, but we'll go through some information with that for you for purposes of consideration. This is a new alcohol beverage license for Tom Mart located at 1225 Gray Highway, Macon, Georgia. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Bronson. The reason for the denial on this is we believe that this is a vice mark. They improperly selected. They were not a vice mark. We did a physical inspection of the location ourselves, indicated there are no fresh foods there, no items there that you can purchase in that regards. There's also an excess number of operating machines there, corn operating machines that exceeds the number allowed by law. For those reasons, we're asking you to deny this motion. So all those in favor of denying this motion, please say aye. I'm sorry. Commissioner Watkins, do you have a question?
Just for my, how many members are present today?
We have 5 present. We have 2 listening in but not voting at this time.
So you can listen in but not vote, so they're not here.
That's correct.
Okay, so they're not voting on anything today.
They may.
You can just jump in when you win in and out, like how? What? That don't feel right.
Once you participate in the meeting, you're participating in the meeting. That uses one of their 2 times to participate by phone.
They on the phone now?
They are.
They're participating.
No. Sure.
Seems like an interesting
So
president.
the member of the public can sit in the audience or they can listen in.
Right.
If they participate in the meeting as members of the public, it doesn't count. If they actually debate, say anything, vote in any way, that counts as one of their 2 meetings. So my understanding is they're just listening.
That's correct. At which point they participate, that will count as one time of their votes. And for members of the public that need to have additional information, we have 2 members today that are required to be in training pursuant to my appointment to them to Macon Water Authority. They are in that training right now. However, they are listening to the meeting so they can stay abreast of what's going on. They only get 2 times per calendar year to participate by phone after the pandemic restrictions have been lifted, which they have now. So it would count as one time once they participate. So at any point they participate and vote in this meeting, for the remainder of this day, that will count as one of their times to do so, and they only allow 2. They were not necessary to complete a quorum here at the beginning of the meeting because I count as that last person, and we had enough people to start the meeting with a quorum here with what was present. So I think that answers all those questions. We'll move on to item C. We take a vote on this, Vice Marshal? Okay. We do have a motion and a second, no further discussion. All those in favor of denying the alcohol license for Tom's Mart located at 1225 Great Highway, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries. We're going to move on to new alcohol license for Jim Shaw's Seafood located at 3040 Vineville Avenue, Macon, Georgia 31204. This is a transfer of licensee. All the paperwork's been completed. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Wilder. Any discussion in regards to Jim Shaw's? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Nope, she just burnt her time. So, so Commissioner Wynn is now in the meeting as he's voted. So that is a aye, and that motion does pass and sent to consent agenda. Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. We're going to move on to item D, which is a new alcohol beverage license for Spring Street, located at 15 Spring Street, Macon, Georgia 31201. That is a transfer license. They have completed the questionnaire. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Anybody like to make a second? Okay. Excuse me? Okay. It's right there by the wing shop on Spring Street. It's a renewal. So as my motion, is there a second? If no second, it dies for lack of a second. What do you say? You second? Okay, got a second by Commissioner Lucas. We do have a motion and a second. Commissioner Bronson, you have a question?
No, I was going to ask, what are the locations in that area that have alcohol being sold?
You got one across the street. There's a store right there on the river there, and you've got a new location that is opening up, being built right now, right across
Right across the street.
Yeah, it's going to be
So
the
we'll
Lowe's.
have 3 alcohol. We have 3 areas that's going to say alcohol in that one corridor, in a sense, right?
Yes.
Okay,
There's 2 right now.
gotcha.
We do have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. Move on to alcohol beverage license for Springs S located at 3927 Napier Avenue. This is just on here for your edification. We passed this last time with a motion by myself and a second by Commissioner Tillman. It passed. However, we were waiting on the completion of the questionnaire. They have already completed that questionnaire now, so this will be sent to final vote next week since it's already been through committee. Going to move on to grants. Item 4A is a resolution authorizing acceptance of fiscal 2020 Homeland Security Grant in the amount of $10,490 with no local match awarded to the Macon-Bibb County Fire Department. Commissioner Bronson is also a sponsor of that motion. Would you like to make that motion, sir? Got a motion by Commissioner Bronson. Can we get a second? Second by Commissioner Wilder. Any discussion in that regards? I've got him. I've got Chief Edwards here to just tell a little information about that this morning. So, sir, if you'll go ahead and just tell us what this is about.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. These are tools that we specifically use every day during our rescue and responding to all emergency hazards in Macon-Bibb County. The high lift jack, there are some pictures that we provided that show rescue ability if we have unstable vehicles. It can even be used for a structure collapse or a wall to support that. That's what the high lift jacks are used for. Piercing tools is a tool that we can access a wall or somewhere where we're having difficulty getting in to gain access for structure fire control. We can actually take this tool and breach a wall, as that picture shows right there. That's used in a roof, but we could breach it and actually apply water inside that area to take care of the fire, get the fire under control. And then the thermal imaging cameras is a device that we typically use for search and rescue mode. That's a picture of it there. If the conditions are blacked out or completely smoked to where we can't see, we can use this device. This tool will go in and we can actually see on that screen if there's victims or a hidden fire or any heat. It detects heat since through that screen we can see that and remedy the emergency at that point.
Thank you, sir. Any additional questions for Chief Edwards? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously, be sent to the consent agenda. Going to move on to contracts for implementation or renewal. We have one item. Actually, we've got several items on the agenda. We'll begin with Item 5A, this is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an independent contractor agreement with the listed parties for the amount of $66,571 for geotechnical consultants in the amount of $17,600 renovations for the interior 7th floor of the district attorney's office. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Lucas. This is the grand jury area. I met with District Attorney Howard, as well as Chief Judge Howard Sims, in an effort to expedite the process for grand jury and have a separate location for them. We decided to modify parts of their building there, utilizing the funds that were set aside for the courthouse renovations. We've expedited that process for her because it's a great need for her, and we're asking for approval on this today. So we do have a motion and second. If there's no further questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. That motion will be sent to consent agenda and it passes. Item 5B is going to be pulled for some procurement investigation that I've asked for on that one. We wanted to make sure that was a state contract, but because of the limited number of participants there, I had some further questions this morning, so I've asked Dr. Moffitt to explore those possibilities. We're going to move on to item 5C. Item 5C is authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Evidence-Based Associates LLC for services provided to Macon-Bibb County Juvenile Court for a maximum of $361,872 using the Juvenile Justice Incentive Grant Funds. That's my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Bronson. This is for all the materials have been included in your package for the counseling for 70 families, detailed with the contractor's information in there. This is similar to the one that we've done on 2 prior occasions. We're just passing through this money. So that's my motion. Can I get a second? Commissioner Bronson, any questions in that regard? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. Item D is a resolution to authorize the mayor to execute a work detail agreement with the Georgia Department of Corrections in an amount of $345,225 for the purpose of hiring offender work detail labor from Macon-Bibb Probation Detention Center to be paid from the general fund from Public Works, street and road contract labor line item, and general fund parks and beautification line item. That's my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Tillman? I'm sorry, Commissioner Wilder. My bad. This is Commissioner Lucas.
I wanted to know if we're still having difficulty getting, you can't make people work. I understand it's a kind of a voluntary thing.
It is, and we've been contacted by the prison, and they are telling us that they are ready to get back. But again, this is as they have inmates available.
The last time we entered into these contracts, they weren't able to get enough
Correct.
Prisoners to volunteer to work the details, so we ended up having to shift money.
We did. That is correct.
Yeah, they've contacted us. They've told us that they have at least 7 details that can work, up to 10 per detail, specific amount of weeks as needed. We have those for the whole year for this price. This is an up to amount. So, of course, if they don't supply the labor, we don't pay the money. We could shift those to contract services.
Right.
We have some other contract services that we're going to be submitting for RFPs now, so it's something that we can certainly make up. But we wanted to go ahead and get back in the list because we have used prison detail before, and we were unable to do so for the last 18 months because of COVID. So they tell us they're ready now. They have sufficient people to fulfill these details, but we never know until we ask them to come.
I think that's good because they do take care of they do a lot of work when they're out. The one thing that we've talked about in the past is not using those details near schools, because I have seen 1 or 2 near schools and daycare centers, things like that. They have to be especially careful in certain locations. I'm assuming that they know that.
There are certain guidelines. If you refer to the contract, there's specific obligations that we must meet as well as they may meet, and we're certainly safety is always a primary concern. So any schools, daycares specifically, we've asked them to, we're trying to get away from them doing it at cemeteries. A lot of times people that are out there visiting at cemeteries, a lot of times it's the widow, and it becomes very uncomfortable with people walking around because they can't really mow. So we've kind of shied away from that. But at the same time, we do have a good need, as Commissioner Watkins mentioned earlier, to cut our grass and right-of-ways. And we recognize the fact that they've been gone for several months because we've seen a overgrowth.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a motion and second. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. That motion carries. Will be sent to consent agenda. Going to move on to item E. That's a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a purchase and sale agreement with Great Southern Recreation. The amount of $61,355 for the purchase and installation of playground equipment for Freedom Park, with funds to be paid from the 2018 SPOS funds for recreation. That is sponsored by several people, including Mayor Pro Tem Clark and Commissioner Paul Bronson. Would y'all like to make that motion? Commissioner Bronson makes the motion. Commissioner Clark makes that second. Any discussion regarding this item? Commissioner Lucas?
Curious about how often the playgrounds are cleaned. There might not be anybody here, maybe the county manager, especially now.
With COVID protocol, we had a schedule of cleaning. We have the portable, we got a spray, but I will get the exact wording of how often we do that on our maintenance schedule, and I will send it to you.
Well, I think that's real important. You know, with more use now, people getting back out, the children, we really do need to make sure that that cleaning and sanitizing is taking place.
Good point. Commissioner Clark?
Yeah, I was gonna see if Clay, if you wouldn't mind telling us about the timeline and the process. I've been told that the Freedom Park project is completed pending this, and then I know that we can do it now or we can do it in the transfer appropriations. Like, it doesn't matter to me, just to talk about the process of Freedom Park and where it's at.
And we'll do that when we get to that section, okay?
I just know right
right.
there.
Any other questions in this regard? Hearing no questions, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. We're going to go ahead and move to item F, as a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract for construction with Co-8 Construction Company to perform sidewalk improvements at 682 Cherry Street at a cost to Macon-Bibb County of $500,000 to be paid from 2018 SPOS funds for road work. Execute a third-party funding agreement with IDP Cherry Holdings. The fund the balance of sidewalk and infrastructure improvements and additional cost to county. No additional cost to the county, I'm sorry. Commissioner Bronson, would you like to make that motion? Okay, Commissioner Bronson has a motion. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Clark. This is the hotel, the new hotel directly across from the auditorium. This commission approved the funding for $500,000 during the previous administration. This is simply us going through the procurement process. As you'll note from reading the materials, that the approximate cost of all the projects around that building for the sidewalk, including the ADA accessibles, the ramps and things of that nature that's necessary, it exceeded $1 million. Our obligation that we agreed to is only $500,000, but because we're doing our SPOS money, it was required to go through our procurement policy. This company was selected to do the work, and we're going to put the $500,000. They have to make up all the rest of the money. Commissioner Tilsman, you have a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Back in September of 2020, the county engineer said that Hollingsworth Road sidewalks was 95% complete as far as what we needed to start the process. What is the update? Because I'm looking at projects that's, again, jumping ahead of projects that was previously approved. And so I've been trying to look him up for the last couple of days. Apparently he's not in my phone. So I need to get an update on that, because in September 2020, we were 95% complete with everything before we start that process. And then I don't want to see all these other projects as far as roads and so forth jump ahead of other projects.
Yeah, I don't think they're jumping ahead. This is a separate procurement process, but I'll have the county manager follow up on that issue with you. In the future, if you have items like that ahead of time, it will be helpful to send those to us ahead of time so we can address
I just
those.
thought about it since this was on the agenda.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. But this is a time-sensitive schedule as well, trying to get opened up and not cause any overruns on our behalf of this building, but we've gone through the natural process on that, and I'm satisfied the procurement's done their job. But we will follow up in the answer for that. Dr. Moffitt, you noted that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. We do have a motion and second on this item. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. The next item is item G, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a professional services agreement with Georgia Municipal Association, Inc., on-site supervisory training for Macon-Bibb County supervisory staff in the amount of $11,250 plus expense payable to the Human Resource Department budget. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Lucas. Dr. Moffitt, will you please explain that for us?
Yes, sir. I apologize. Good morning, Commissioners. This is a plan I would like to do doing training. Ironically, last week I went in a former director's office with the new IT, and he had a picture from 2017 of the department heads at that time. Since that time, we've probably replaced over 75% of the senior leadership in the last 4 years. So I have a number of new managers and new supervisors in positions, and I would like to do some in-house training on a variety of topics. GMA has a training program that they will come on site, anywhere from 30 to 40 participants per class. I think this is for 15 classes. I can get, if it's not in the resolution, I can get you the list of the classes, but it is classes that are much needed because in consultation with the county attorney, some of the complaints that we have can be addressed with training, can be addressed with being consistent and making sure that all leaders or all managers and supervisors know the proper procedure, especially when it comes to discipline, making sure we're all documenting the same, that we are consistent in our deliverance of the escalation of discipline, of how to write somebody up. And I don't like to just focus on the negative because there are a lot of positive things on how you motivate teams and things of that nature. So I think this would be very beneficial to the county if we can start with our managers and supervisors, especially those that have been in the role for less than 2 years, to do this training.
Thank you, Dr. Moffitt, for that explanation, and thank you for taking the lead on doing this. I think this is something that's definitely needed to make sure we're all on the same page and continue to get better with our governance as well as our training. So I think GM is an excellent company to choose to do this, and I look forward to what they have to present. So we do have a motion and second. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously to be sent to consent agenda. We have item H. It's a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a agreement of extension with the Houston County Board of Health WIC program for the lease of the office space located at 456 Oglethorpe Street in the amount of $21,215 for 1 year lease. That's my motion along with Commissioner Bronson. Would you like to make that motion, sir?
So moved.
Commissioner Bronson has a motion. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion in that regard? I will say I've reviewed that lease. It's one that this commission has continued to do since 2013. It is fair market value for that lease, and I do support this motion. So we do have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. All right, I'm going to move on to transfers and appropriations. We have several items to present today, and most of these items will deal with the American Rescue Plan money. We do have some, let me see if I mess up here. Yeah, we got one other item first. We do have several presenters in the room, and some of this I will handle myself, but we're going to begin with Clay Murphy and the ordinance 6A to authorize the reappropriation of $140,419.24 from the 2018 SPLOST timeline, Parks and Recreation Freedom Park line item, to the South Bibb Recreation Center and Mattie Hubbard Jones Park projects. This is sponsored by several commissioners, including Pro Tem Clark and Commissioner Raymond Wilder. Would one of you two like to make that motion? Commissioner Clark, Wilder make the second. We have a motion and a second, and now Mr. Murphy, we'll hear from you, and if you can keep in mind the question that Pro Tem asked before and answer that this time would be appropriate.
Yes, sir. One of the things that the commission has done with SPLOST since I've been on almost 8 years is when a project is deemed substantially complete and there's money left over, we allocate that money to projects that aren't complete. In this case, today y'all have approved the playground equipment at Freedom Park. So that will substantially complete Freedom Park, and it leaves us about $140,000. I'd like to reappropriate that money so that we can finish the playground at South Bibb. We have about $50,000 left at South Bibb, so the money in this transfer would allow us to complete the playground and finish South Bibb Recreation Center. And then the rest of the money going to Mattie Hubbard Park, that would allow us to do some of the improvements there in the Pleasant Hill Park there, that the budget was greater, the cost from the contractor were greater than our budget for Mattie Hubbard, so this would allow us to make those improvements.
Okay, you've heard any questions for Commissioner Bronson? Go ahead.
Hey, just out of curiosity, with the parks, and it's probably off record here on this end, but the park at Ponce de Leon, I'm pretty sure I'm saying that probably wrong. Are you guys tracking that park on the south side of
I don't know about that park, Commissioner.
Okay.
It's not, it wasn't a SPLOST project, so I don't manage non-SPLOST projects.
Okay. Thank you. I'll bring it back up on the next meeting.
No problem.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Commissioner Lucas? Sorry.
I recently inquired about the Dolores Brooks, the completion of that, the sign, and I think it's been about 1 million years since we started that, and I think that's all that's left to be done on that, the sign, and then also the Wise Avenue.
The Wise Avenue
And so
sign.
we can go ahead and get those things
Sorry,
done.
Commissioner, I didn't mean to step on top of you there. The Wise Avenue sign, my understanding is that is coming out of Robert Walker's budget, and that sign face has been ordered. The sign at Dolores Brooks and Thayer Nursery, but the sign at Dolores Brooks, that is a DOT highway. DOT has prohibited us from putting a sign on that road. They want us to take down the sign that has the post on it that has the little bitty sign on there, because they say we were not authorized to place that sign out there. They will not allow us to clear the trees between the road and the park because that is on DOT right of way. That is 100% controlled by the Department of Transportation. Now, we can put a sign further up, but I know that's not where you want it. But they will not allow us to put a sign on that right of way. We've made a number of inquiries with them, met them out there probably half a dozen times.
I'd like to see the documents on that, because I just can't believe
We can get it
that
from you.
is that is ridiculous. How are you going to tell where the park is?
I don't disagree.
And the little sign that's been up there for years and years from when my sons played out there. Nobody can see it unless you know where you're going. You miss the entrance. We were able to get the entrance expanded so that you don't have cars going in, running into cars coming out, which have been that same way since my sons played out there, which has been a long time. It's been a long time. We need to do something on that. You gotta find, there has to be, with all these mines, you can come up, somebody's got to come up with a location for that sign that's visible from the road. And so you're saying it's the trees that GDOT will not let us cut?
Well, there's a couple of things. The little sign that you referred to, they want us to remove that little sign. We did not get DOT permission to put that sign up, and they said it's not allowed. Engineering met with them out there. I met with them. Recreation's met with them. They will not allow us to clear those trees to place a sign anywhere near the right. Well, it's two things. They will not allow us to clear the trees so we can see the center. They will not allow us to put a sign, and the right of way extends to the top of the hill. When you come up the driveway, there's a steep bank, and then there's a flat spot. They said you can go outside that flat spot, but we can't put a sign in. Can't clear the trees to be able to see that sign. Now, like I said, we've met engineering, recreation, and myself have met out there at least a half a dozen times with 3 different DOT representatives. And they are emphatic that we are not allowed to put a sign on that right of way.
Well, something has to be done. We can't, we've been keeping the family at bay for years now because we've not had a dedication of the Dolores Brooks Park, and we renamed it how many years ago? It's been a while. So that family, Dolores Brooks, has since passed away after we renamed it and everything, but our family is kind of wondering why it takes years to do it.
To the conversation, this is not isolated. We run into the same issue with another park on Wimbish Road. So we have been working to get those 2 signs, but GDOT, I will ask for something in writing with their denial of us putting signs in that right of way. But this is Dolores Brooks and Theron Ussery. At Theron Ussery, they're saying that we can cut some trees more back of the right of way, but again, as Clay said, that's not going to accomplish the problem because it is way off where you can't, as you just said, where you can't see it, so it don't make it doesn't make practical sense to try to put it that far back. So, but Clay is correct. We would try to get the official letter from GDOT, but GDOT has denied us, and we've asked numerous times. As Clay said, we've met out there numerous times trying to find a proper location, but they've denied us in both locations. But the Wise Avenue sign should be ordered and in process. And as for the dedication, did I see your email? They want to do it around Christmas time. They're scheduling a dedication of the park of the center around December.
We were anticipating that the sign would be up, when we do the dedication. I'm just disappointed that it's taken so long on that. And I know GDOT can be stubborn, but we do have a legislative delegation that might be able to help us. Have you tried that?
No, ma'am.
I think that might be something you might want to try. They do fund GDOT.
I understand, and maybe Dr. Moffitt can help me with that one.
Senator Kennedy is the chair of the delegation, local delegation.
I understand.
So that's just a suggestion.
In all fairness, Commissioner, because I'm not an employee of the county, it is not my place to reach out to the delegation on behalf of the county, so I'm gonna ask Dr. Moffitt to do that.
It doesn't matter with me either. Whomever
I understand.
is the appropriate person.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Pro Tem Clark?
I just wanted to ask for clarification. Does this round out the funding needed to complete the Matty Hubbard project?
We hope.
That's
I mean, we will be hanging on by a fingernail when it's done, but yes.
okay. Thank you.
And I wanted to understand your question earlier about the process. You asked me about the process.
Yeah, I was more about the since we approved the funding for the playground equipment at Freedom Park. I was just wanted to kind of get an update on the progress report of that finishes the funding for Freedom Park. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that's what I was curious
Okay.
about. Thank you.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes, sir. Clay, good morning.
Good morning.
On GDOT right away, how many feet is that?
They've established that, so it all depends on the road. I mean, they've established that one. It runs back about 65 feet from the edge of the road up the hill. Yes, sir. And I think the intent was in the long term, they extended the right of way so large so that they can eventually make that, if they needed to, make that a 4-lane highway.
Huh. And on Wimbish, I don't know why they would have any say-so on Wimbish.
I can't answer that question. The
It's
county engineer.
It's not a state road, so that's why I'm curious.
I understand, and I'm not sure that DOT had that say there. It had to do with moving things off of immovable objects. Placed too close to the right of way are not a great thing. So we're just having to slide that one back off of Wimbish a little bit.
So on the right of way, on the other one, you're saying they moved it back to 65 feet?
I think it's 65 feet from the edge, if I remember correctly.
Was it originally something like 20?
No, sir.
It
I
was
mean,
more,
I mean, from our history, it is a wide right-of-way, very wide right-of-way. I think it's 100, it may be 65 feet from the center line. I think it's 130 feet right-of-way along there.
wow. Well, maybe that's part of Dr. Moffitt's plea that maybe we reduce it back to where it was. So you
Well,
could,
I mean, it could have been that way for the last 80 years. I mean, we just don't know.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Any additional questions? Hearing no questions, we do have a motion and a second on this item. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. Going to move on to item 6B as we begin to discuss the American Rescue Plan, or what I call it ARP money. Make a couple of preliminary statements for edification of our people in attendance today, as well as those at home. Bibb County is slated to receive a total of $75,864,910. And I say slated because we have not received that. We're supposed to receive a portion of that this year and next year. Bibb County, because it is a consolidated government, will receive both the city and county portions, and that is why our portion is much larger than those governments surrounding us that are not consolidated. The amount of money that we have received to date is $37,932,455. That's what we have sent to our account to use for ARP. Having said that, the guidelines have continued to change. We are here today to discuss the possibilities of appropriating funds for certain items that we believe, according to documentation that you should have received by email on yesterday, indicating allowable expense categories, and there's some subparts to those categories for your consideration. However, we must always be cautioned, as before in the CARES Act, these regulations are subject to change. In September, we expect all the regulations that micromanage each of these parts to come out. What we have chosen today is what we believe is low-hanging fruit that is specifically, explicitly listed in these items here and that we have heard so far. This is only the total expense that have been suggested so far, and those resolutions did come from myself, on behalf of the mayor's office, $18,100,000. And we'll go through each one of these and discuss those and vote them up or down. My inclination is that over the next time between now and September, we continue to get the guidelines, the regulations, continue to speak to the community and hear from commissioners about how you like to access the other $20 million that we have in our account, assuming these items were to pass. But just to give you a little that background information on there, this is why these items have been chosen. It's the commissioner's pleasure to vote these things up or down. We'll have some conversations on them today, but we've only received one half of the money, $37 million. We're gonna go through these items one by one, and then we'll take that accordingly. But I wanted to let people know how much money Bibb County is slated to get in, how much we have received, and the guidelines that we'll be going by right now to determine how to spend that money in the most appropriate way. We will continue to get guidelines, and we expect by September to have all of the guidelines finalized. Commissioner Tillman, did you have a preliminary question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. You and I have spoken. I've spoken to several commissioners. If you can, or if you will, explain, because usually, we've had this conversation about when we receive money like this. I think it's incumbent and important for not only the commission but the public to clearly understand the process, because people will begin to look and see and say, what about me? What about my neighbor? What about my area? And so forth. And so I think you've done a good job as far as explaining the amount of money. But going forward, how can we begin to implement or share suggestions on funding? And you and I had a conversation where I shared that I learned that in Birmingham, Alabama, they received like $220 million, because they're a much larger city. And they asked for, and I know a lot of time we emphasize funding on nonprofits, but we emphasize funding. They emphasize funding on profits and for nonprofits. All of these measures that is in place is everything that I would support, and I support. I think these are projects that we all have said in the past that we support, but I do think that as people begin to ask questions, that we need to be a little bit, I don't know how we become more transparent and detailing some of these items that we're putting into place, because folks out there in the public have asked, or me, matter of fact, Commissioner Jones and I was at an event this past Sunday over in the Ingleside community where that question came up. And I told them about our procurement process, how it works, but specifically, when the government buys a hammer, you know, it's detailed. I don't know how we begin to be more transparent as far as putting this stuff online to be able to say how we're spending this money more specifically. I tried to explain to a gentleman that if a contractor has a bid at $1 million and he's redesigning a property, we've had 3 meetings to decide what's happening or what they want in that particular area. And then that person that's bidding on it has to bid and maintain all of those things. I think after that, then it's up to the contractor to decide, you know, how his breakdown is. I don't know what responsibility we have or if that's in place. I've never really received that question a whole lot until recent. I don't know if we're doing that. I don't know if we can do it, but because of, I think, COVID and folks have been home for a year watching us and asking and expecting these details. So that's why I bring that up. But I think these projects are projects that we all have been asking for and looking for to fund. So thank you, I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman, and you and I have spoken about that. I'll be getting with procurement on that. I think a lot of that is dealing with, and I see our procurement director, Franklin Lawson, here today. We'll be bringing something before you in a couple of weeks. Similar to that, as you know, it all depends on the process, how we select these bids. Some of them are broken down specifically for items and how much you're going to spend. Some of them are CM when you just look at the project and you have somebody overseeing that. So we have to let them know the progress that we want to go through and the process we want to go through. But I do think we're as transparent as we can be, and certainly everything we have is always voted on out here and distributed electronically everywhere and preserved as a public record. So I'm confident that we're doing everything we can to do that, but we can always get better, and that's why I'll be working with his office to do so. So I hope that answers your question, at least in short term. We're going to go ahead and begin discussion on this. Does anyone need to take a comfort break before we get started? Okay, we'll take a 5-minute comfort break real quick. Okay, we're back in our regular meeting, and we're going to pick up where we left off at, and that is going to be item 6B. At this time, I've asked Representative Newtown to come forward, and we're going to begin with item 6B. We'll go through this. I'll read it, get a motion in a second, and then if there's any presentation or questions, we'll have someone answer those for you. Item 6B is an ordinance to authorize the appropriation of up to $1 million to American Rescue Plan Act funds for the provision of services to disproportionately impacted communities in the form of housing support, affordable housing to be administered by Newtown Macon Incorporated, sponsored by several members here, including myself, Mayor Pro Tem Clark, Commissioner Raymond Wilder, Commissioner Paul Bronson, Commissioner Virgil Watkins. Would anyone like to make that motion? Motion by Commissioner Clark. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Bronson. We have a motion and a second. At this time, I'm going to ask Ms. Bethany Rogers to give us just some brief synopsis of what this is and be prepared to answer any questions in that regard. Good morning. I'll turn the mic on.
Okay, there we go. Good morning. So I'm Bethany Rogers. I'm Executive Director of Newtown Loans, which is our lending subsidiary of Newtown Macon. I have two of my esteemed colleagues, our CFO, James Fritz, and our Vice President, Aaron Keller, with me. So we have a deep bench today for our presentation for you. And I'm really excited to talk to you about this program that we're proposing, a pilot program, the Neighborhood Investment Revolving Loan Fund, that will supplement your initiatives around addressing blighted housing and properties in Macon-Bibb. This program will provide the technical assistance and the financing in some of our low-income neighborhoods, low-income census tracts, where there are critical and viable development projects, but the financing does not exist to execute them. So, as many of you know, through your partnership, the bonds that you have issued, we have been able to deploy close to about $19 million now in loan funds over the last decade, or in loan projects, I should say, 45 real estate and small business projects. Some of you may not know, last fall, we were designated by the U.S. Treasury as a community development financial institution. The CDFI industry, they target underserved populations. They offer technical assistance and financing, and they make these investments in neighborhoods that don't see a lot of investment, but where a lot of successful investments have been executed, and they have proven that it's a really viable approach to community revitalization and a sustainable approach. That revolving loan funds are a powerful tool to get money back and to keep investing in these neighborhoods. So we have built a team and a set of resources. We support low-income residents of Macon-Bibb, women, entrepreneurs of color, and first-time borrowers, anyone who needs the coaching and the financing in places where traditional financing does not serve or does not fund those projects. The challenges we see it right now is obviously all of our blighted properties. In some cases, we have vacant lots, and some of our residents, our Macon-Bibb residents, cannot access the financing they need to either do new construction projects or to rehabilitate these projects. And again, just as much as the finance, a lot of folks need the coaching. They need to understand what they need to do as far as their personal financials, the things they need to do to be a successful applicant and put a sustainable deal together. So we pair those two things together. And our proposal for this program is to actually move out of our focus in the Central Business District, more on commercial projects, and move into our low-income residential neighborhoods, low-income census tracts, and we can either finance owner-occupied projects, homes, or investment properties with our residents. We could hold the first mortgage. We could finance just during the construction phase. A lot of times banks just don't want to do that construction phase, but then they're willing to come in once a property has been rehabilitated. Sometimes a bank is comfortable to lend a certain amount, but that developer still needs so much cash that they need another lender to come in to actually have two loans. So we could do any of those kinds of products in this case and do some targeted training with our neighborhood residents in Macon-Bibb about how you either invest in a home for the first time or how you build a successful investment project. We envision these projects averaging about $100,000. So in the first year, our hope would be to deploy this $1 million in 10 to 15 projects. We do have a pending match, a one-for-one match. So we are going to hopefully leverage this so we could double that impact, and over the next year to 2 years be able to do somewhere between 20 and 30 projects. This is a revolving loan fund program, so as we are paid off, paid in full, or just paid down with principal and interest payments, we can continue to invest in these neighborhoods. And then as more investment happens, what we find, and we have definitely found this to be the case in downtown Macon, that the finance industry gets more comfortable. They're willing to start investing. More of our residents are willing to start investing, and our money, as we reinvest, goes further and further to improve the neighborhoods. One thing that I do want to emphasize is, as a CDFI, we have really taken a lot of time to adopt best practices as far as our application process goes. So we have a transparent and fair process, so we are capable of lending this money in a way that is a clear and accessible process, but it's also transparent and fair. We see this program, it's a pilot, but we see the opportunity not only to leverage this pending match that I mentioned, but other financing dollars along the way. And our expertise and all the built-in support services that we provide, not only the coaching, but the loan closing. And sometimes folks have issues once they've finished the project and they need our support and consultation. And of course, over time, we see the property values going up in these neighborhoods where we will make these investments. You'll have increased property tax revenues, and most importantly, will help encourage long-term wealth building. One of the biggest issues we run into on our small business support side is that a lot of the folks we work with don't have assets. They haven't built any wealth or built any assets. And real estate is one of the most powerful tools to do this. So we also ultimately see this as a way to build wealth and support our entrepreneurial community. So that's the why, the how, and what we expect to get out of it. Of course, I can answer any more detailed questions about the program as proposed.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Pro Tem Clark, you have a question?
Yeah, thank you so much for the explanation and for all y'all do. I wanted a brief. I think Commissioner Watkins, your email touched on this a little bit too. I appreciate the stated intention to operate in low-income census tracts, but I was wondering what the federal guidelines require you to do and what this enabling legislation requires us to do, and if so, what's the process for making sure that
So
happens?
as a community development financial institution, you have to designate a primary target market, and in Macon-Bibb, ours is residents in low-income census tract neighborhoods. So we already have an obligation to them to do at least 60% operation in that, just under that umbrella, but ours is much higher than that as a whole right now. I think we're at about 95%. And that those are numbers that we have to keep track of anyway at this point because of that designation and our donors. And so we can have the same kind of tracking mechanism, but those are our target populations as it is as a designated CDFI.
Thank you. Commissioner Lucas.
Thank you. At first, when I looked at this and I saw Newtown Macon as the agency to administer this, I said, well, they do so much of their work in downtown. What about everybody else? And your explanation has really helped me with this. How will you coordinate? How can you coordinate with our small business arm of government to achieve? And then after that, I have another question.
Sure. Well, I think one of the biggest things will be to use them not only as a mechanism to help get word out about the program, but also to coordinate on those training services. I'm happy to say we've grown the team. We're now actually a team of 4. It was just 1 when I started, and that's just happened in the last about 6 months that we've become a team of 4. So I have a couple people who are focused on that outreach and training. So in the case of this program, I see us needing to do training outside of the office and in some of these neighborhoods. So I see us working closely with Sharice on coordinating some of that to help get the word out, but also to figure out where should we hold these programs, how should we implement them in a way that we get the most impact and we reach the largest audience that we can in doing that training.
Okay, that sounds good. The other concern that I have, and I've expressed it before, and that is that there are a number of neighborhoods in Macon where you have a lot of folks who are homeowners. These are neighborhoods that were majority white, but as black families moved in, then the neighborhoods became almost predominantly black. However, the folks living in those areas are homeowners, the majority of them. They're professionals, retirees. They are folks who would be considered middle income, a few upper income. In those neighborhoods, a lot of the homes, as older folks either leave or they pass away, their homes end up with banks or just growing up, and people come in, the speculators come in and buy up these homes. They fix them up, and then they become rental property. And so what is happening is these neighborhoods, and I live in one of them, and the other one is, I'm in Walnut Creek, the other one is the Shirlington, the Belvedere Manor area. Those areas are becoming rental neighborhoods. Right. And it is a shame because the property values are going to remain the same for those who own property, or they're going to decrease. is there any way or any program or anything you can think of that you could do, and maybe this will fall under some of the other housing initiatives, so that you can save these neighborhoods and keep them from becoming rental neighborhoods? And there is a home, one right now, that is for rent. It is 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 3. It rents for $1,499 a month, which, if you put somebody in there who aspires to own their home eventually, unless they're super rich or they hit the lottery, they're not going to be in a position, because they're paying out so much of their income, they're not going to be in position to become a homeowner. They'll be forever a renter. So I describe that situation because I see it as a real serious problem, not only for those formerly thriving neighborhoods but in the east side, but there are different pockets of this same thing happening all over. So I wanted to throw that out, and I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over until we get somebody who will, some contractor, someone who will take it on and be able to go and get the funding to rehab these homes and to build home ownership again, rather than turning these neighborhoods that could be prosperous and thriving into rental neighborhoods.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the biggest struggle of community development is trying to empower your own residents to be part of the change in neighborhoods. And so we do intend to work closely with Macon-Bibb, the case of heirs properties where they get tied up. There are ways that we can work closely with the county government with the blight list and those kinds of things too, or vacant lots where people can come in and build. But I think this program is absolutely designed to counteract those trends by providing pathways to ownership of our own residents in those communities. And I have to emphasize that so much of it is about the education and the comfort as much as the money. Because if you go to a bank and you don't know the terms and the language, you don't understand the parameters that you have to meet, you're just never going to go. But if we can go and explain that, now we have a lot of practice about how to coach people through that process, and we've really been successful, and I see it being able to extend now into our residential neighborhoods.
Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Commissioner Watkins?
Thank you. And again, I want to just express appreciation to Newtown and going outside of your traditional boundaries to provide this service through the CDFI. I think it's an awesome opportunity, and if I'm understanding it right, essentially what you're saying is developers and potential owners have the ability in a Houston Avenue corridor area to access additional funds that wouldn't be there traditionally to help us eliminate blight.
Yes, and the coaching too.
And coaching, right. So, and I guess in terms of like scope, I know that the blight problem here is like probably 1,000-ish type thing. 10 to 15 loans. Why do we stop there, and how do we scale to show impact?
I think this is a pilot program, and in the same way that we tested it and made sure that we had all our I's dotted and our T's crossed to get this started, and now we can really see the impact. And again, the beautiful thing about what's starting to happen in downtown is so many more people are comfortable in investing that our dollars that we were able to leverage early on go a lot further in helping more and more projects happen. So for us, this is the starting place as we move into this residential work, and as one of the few folks who's willing to go in some of these neighborhoods where we know deals work, and they're important, viable deals that work, and provide the financing so that, and in time, I think there will be other players besides Newtown in some of these neighborhoods to make that happen. But for us, this seems like a sound starting place and a reasonable scale to get in here and be effective and hopefully see it grow over time. We know the need, as you say, is there.
How long do you expect it? If y'all had
We've made a commitment in the outline to deploy the $1 million in the first year of the program.
Thank you. I think the other thing to add is we are hoping to get a match for that. One of the reasons we have Newtown here today is because of the great reputation you have, and a lot of people say, well, they're doing everything for downtown. We want them to do this in the neighborhoods, and this is another way we can do that in the neighborhoods and leverage the funds. So I think it's important that we take our money, which is the $1 million, and be able to leverage that with potential another $1 million that we're confident is going to happen, so we can basically double what you're doing.
Yeah.
And if this is something that is proven to work, it's something that we can, what I've been calling, double down on in the future with other monies to do that. But I know the CDFI is going to be growing. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for millions to come into our community, both business and residential. So we're very excited about that. So we do have a motion and a second, and we have numerous people who have supported this items. No further discussion. All those in favor of moving this forward, Commissioner Watkins, you have okay. Please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We have item C, which is an ordinance to authorize the appropriation of up to $600,000 in American Rescue Act funds for the provision of services to disproportionately impacted communities in the form of housing support, housing support, affordable housing to be granted to Historic Macon Foundation, Inc., sponsored by numerous members of the commission as well as myself and Commissioner Howell. Anyone like to make that motion? A motion by, who is that? Commissioner Wilder, second by Pro Tem Clark. At this time, I'll ask Ethiel Garlington on behalf of Macon Historic Foundation just to give a brief synopsis of what you do with your plan and some areas that you may be looking to go into and about a potential match. Thank you.
Good morning. Again, my name is Ethiel Garlington. I'm the Executive Director of Historic Macon Foundation. Thank you for this opportunity to share more about our proposal. As many of you all know, Historic Macon has been doing revolving fund work with real estate for nearly 50 years in the community. And those have been solely in qualified census tracts. Our primary model has been focused on single-family homeowner-occupied houses specifically. And so we've been working house by house, street by street, block by block to transform neighborhoods. This time next year, we'll be completely done with our work in Bells Hill. We started in the early 2000s, and when we're done next year, we will have completed about 60 houses. Those are single-family, homeowner-occupied, deed-restricted. But what we realized a couple years ago is that healthy neighborhoods have to have a mix of owner-occupied houses and rental housing. So what we've done, we've experimented and started doing some rental housing in Bells Hill. Bells Hill homes are currently commanding some of the highest prices per square feet in the county, but we want to complement our work by building quality, affordable rental units in Bells Hill. The Macon Housing Authority property at Tatnall Place are always full. They always have a waiting list, so we know that there's a strong demand there. On Oglethorpe Street, just down from the fire station, we've assembled parcels with the Land Bank Authority with the expectation of building multifamily apartments. For a long time, our plan was to put out an RFP to get market rate housing there, but in the end, what we've decided is to build 6 duplexes for affordable housing. These would use the Housing Choice Voucher Program with the Housing Authority. This is often referred to as a Section 8 program. And our hope is to match these $600,000 with a local funder so we can again double that money and do $1.2 million. The good news is that we can scale according to funding that we have available. We also have plenty of revolving fund experience, and so the interesting thing here is that once we build these duplexes, we'll be able to borrow against them and build more of these across the community. So once these are online, we'll generate the revenue and rededicate that to the revolving fund to build more. And in particular, we've been looking at the area around Central and Miller in the neighborhood known as Napier Heights, and our expectation is to expand in that neighborhood over time. So Historic Macon has the architectural plans in hand. We have a licensed general contractor on staff. We have the property assembled, and so we're ready to go with a shovel-ready project. As you'll hear later on in the agenda, we're working on a 4-plex apartment building on Boulevard in the North Highlands neighborhood. So in the end, we can see that the rental housing options are key to successful neighborhoods, and to Commissioner Lucas's point, it is a balance between rental and homeowner occupied. But this is another way that our organization can combat blight in the community and continue to raise property values. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I do, of course, I want to focus on areas because we've discussed possibilities. During our blight count, significantly when I was on the school board, we noticed many homes around Miller and Central High School, and what that does to a child walking to school each and every day, how things tend to be ignored, trees, sidewalks, et cetera. And I think I'm definitely interested in possibilities there of matching our Black program with opportunities for not only historic Macon, but other opportunities for people to build on areas there. I know Habitat has a presence in that area as well. So we're interested in reviving these neighborhoods and protecting them against gentrification, of course. And I think that's some of the conversations we'll be having. I think this is, just like we talked before on the previous, it's one of those things where we're able to leverage our money. It's not that we're intentionally only selecting Macon Historic Foundation, but we're seeing an opportunity where we can take this $600,000 and multiply that times 2 to get to $1.2 million and make real significant impact and to maximize what we're doing here for the community. So certainly excited about that. Like you, I agree. There's many areas around Macon-Bibb County, including East Macon, Houston Avenue, Bloomfield, that we're looking at where it's saving whole neighborhoods, and you have to do that through mixed-use environments. Home ownership, certainly to me, is one of the things I like. Not everybody can be a homeowner. That requires a lot of education and knowledge about that, and just basically learning the basic steps on how to be a homeowner. In particular, we want to do transition housing so people that are in the experiencing homelessness, maybe at Brookdale, can transition to housing, but they have to have the know-how and the training to know how to manage a budget and to do those things so they can upkeep those homes as well, and know that you just don't have to pay the lease. There's other maintenance requirements that do that. So I think these are going to give us opportunities to expand, in particular on Houston Avenue. When we look at block by block over there, we need some quads over there. We need some home ownership. We need some rental opportunities, but we also need some good businesses on that road. And these are all the pieces of the puzzle that we're trying to put together throughout the community. And I think this is a small step to that. This is another one of those pilot deals that we've seen work in Bills Hill area, and that's over $150 million have been spent in that neighborhood. I can see the same thing happening in Napier Heights because we've got several interested parties. I look forward, we're working with commissioners on future resolutions where we can put out revolving loan funds where people can borrow at low interest rate to build their own homes, to buy homes, to invest in homes in their neighborhood. So I appreciate you doing that today. I think we have a question from Commissioner Bronson.
Yes, sir. You kind of hit me on the head with that one. So I had a question in regards to housing, right? When we start talking about renting houses and so forth, what programs do we have in place? Of course, rent to own. Is there anything that of that nature of that end? And then, of course, we talk about kids going up and down, walking up and down the road to school. I, for one, I share multiple district areas with different commissioners throughout. One of the ones I'm really focusing on is South Macon. So when we start talking about Houston Avenue and the different opportunities there, what game plan do we have in place for, one, home ownership, and then two, Houston Avenue particularly?
Yep. So the first question, the rent-to-own prospects, we've worked with Mike Austin and looked into those programs, and there's a pretty good HUD program that's essentially the Housing Choice Voucher, which is a Section H voucher, but it leads to home ownership. So it's a rent-to-own program through the Housing Authority. We've talked about that with him in the past. This program would not necessarily alleviate that, but it is an opportunity for us to work with them on other opportunities. Okay. In terms of Houston Avenue, our organization has not done anything in that area yet, but there is plenty of opportunity for us to go there and work with those partners who are there. So,
thank you, Commissioner Watkins. You have a question?
So, and I guess I'm more overarching. Like, this is an incredibly specific project, and all for it. No one don't mistake me. But I guess I'm just wondering, like, $600,000 for duplexes. Like, what is the overarching housing support fund goal? I know it's a bucket that we're spending in, but like I say, is it reasonable for us to do this? I guess in 10 more neighborhoods. Is that our plan over the next month or two? Or and I don't know if I'm not saying I'm opposed to that. I'm just wondering, like, and even I guess with what I just saw, like, are you planning on, quickly doing this project and coming back to us for more ARP funds to provide affordable housing? Like, I'm just kind of.
Yeah, that's a fair question. So our expectation is, the nice thing about this project is that it's set to go. I mean, the only piece that we're missing is the funding. And so for us to be able to deploy this $600,000 tomorrow, essentially, is pretty special. And so the intent there would be that we'd build these, but then that capital, that equity in that development would allow us to revolve those funds in other neighborhoods and other projects. So in other words, we can do the project now, but then we'll have the equity in it to continue doing more.
And I think to answer Commissioner Watson's question a little bit, is one way to do is you got a shovel-ready project that they need to spend the money so we can see the success and how you do the work. But the other thing is, in particular to your project, is the match. Nothing against your credibility, your reputation in the community, but to be able to double that money says a lot. And I think we're going to the Napier Heights area, which is an area that we have a lot of blight in ourselves from our own blight that we've looked at. We have a school there, we have a school system there, and it gives us an opportunity to cooperate with them on some potential funding and some joint ventures there as we discuss land bank authority in that area to maximize that. As far as the overarching thing, that's for this commission to really decide on what we want to do. I think we've chosen these because they're low-hanging fruit, because there are potential matches there, so we can see what works best for everyone. If the commission decides at some point in time they want to do a $20, $30 million project and use this money with particular companies, that's certainly an option. If we continue to get these matches and target certain areas on there, I think that's a good thing, but these are just conversations we're having. But again, the reason we chose this is low-hanging fruit. It meets the guidelines of federal that we know of, and this is a potential match where we can double our money. So I think that's the most important thing that I would take out of Commissioner Watkins. Certainly, all commissioners will have input on further resolutions and can propose your own resolution. But I think as we go through this process, very strategically and carefully to leverage our funds, we're going to be able to find that we're going to take that $75 million and get over $100 million by the time we properly leverage this money. So any additional questions, Commissioner Watkins, or follow-up?
When it comes to the match, and also for Newtown, is the 600,000 the maximum that is matched 1-to-1, or is there a?
Yes,
did we
sir.
set that ceiling and the same for the $1 million for Newtown?
This particular grant's a $600,000 request that we would service the match for.
Oh, what's the grant?
I'm not at liberty to say.
It's
I don't
a
want to.
grant?
What?
It's a grant?
Yes, it's a grant.
Oh, what's the grant? What's the agency who administers the grant?
I can't.
There is, but this information is something we can't discuss publicly, but there's an opportunity for a match on both of these, and they have not been awarded yet. So that's all the information we basically can say at this point in time. We do expect in the next week or so to have some final resolutions on this, but this is the reason we're bringing it to you, is because it's a great matching opportunity. We feel very confident it's going to happen, but it needs to go through that process. Okay. Any other questions? Commissioner Clark?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you spoke earlier about how the measures that the county looks at measures that either slow or stop the traditional idea of gentrification in neighborhoods like Napier Heights, who have experienced historic redlining and stuff like that. And I just more a question to you and a question to Ethiel. What does historic Macon do to slow the traditional idea of gentrification, so people who have owned their homes in places like Napier Heights generationally don't wake up like they do in the Westview neighborhood of Atlanta, and their neighborhood's gone and their families priced out of their neighborhoods? What mechanisms have y'all done traditionally to slow that or stop that? And Mr. Mayor, what does the county do?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so early on when we worked in neighborhoods, we do a couple things. One, we work directly with neighborhoods to make sure that we are welcome. They want us to work with the neighborhood. We also do more than just our single-family owner-occupied houses. We offer low-interest loans for facades and energy efficiency updates. We also only target blighted vacant houses or vacant properties. So we work closely with the residents who are there. We make sure that our work is complementing what they want out of the neighborhood. And at the end of the day, our expectation, just like Bethany said, is that we're hoping that our work helps build wealth for those families and those residents. And for better or for worse, in Macon, speculators are not pushing out residents in the neighborhood. But the key to, I think, the healthy neighborhood is that we are making sure that people who want to stay in the neighborhood, whether it's renting or buying, can afford to rent and stay in the neighborhood. And so I think that's why a program like this on Oglethorpe Street is a perfect complement to, high-priced real estate. And so it's a pretty big puzzle that we're trying to solve. But thank you.
And I think the other aspect to come in the future is going to be some gap financing. In particular, you have neighborhoods that would like to have their house modified, improved, to lift up the whole neighborhood. But the problem is, because of the dilapidated structures in those neighborhoods, the price and the values and the appraisals are down so much they can't go borrow the money. And I think by us creating funds and providing gap financing for things like that, and willing to encourage growth of the neighbors themselves to own properties in their own neighborhoods, I think that's one way you're going to protect that. I do look forward, and we're kind of getting ahead of the game here now on the gentrification issue, but we'll have a for lack of a better term, work session on that after we get back from our GEMA training. There's some issues there that they'll be discussing, and we're going to get some regulations in September, I think, that will specifically address this issue on our housing needs. So I think that's a conversation. But I appreciate you being here today. This is a great matching opportunity. It is shovel-ready, which means as soon as we were to approve it today and next week and do the funds, we could see the direct result of that. We expect you at that time to be able to leverage those funds to go over to Napier Heights Avenue and begin to explore the possibilities there. I know you're working in concert with Land Bank Authority already on locating some lots or going to some subsequent tax sales where you purchase the property over there. So that's an area that certainly needs to be addressed, and we're certainly going to cooperate with the school system on that as well. So we do have a motion and second, and there appears no further questions. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know you'll be back to present something in just a little bit on something else. We're going to move on to another item, which is item D. This is ordinance to authorize the appropriation of $5 million under the American Rescue Act funds for the provision of services to disproportionately impacted communities in the form of housing support, other housing services by providing that the elimination of blight, the construction of affordable housing in Macon-Bibb County, sponsored by numerous folks listed on this, including myself and Commissioner Bill Howard, who's not here today. And that's my motion. Can I get a second? Second by, who's that? Commissioner Wilder. Got a motion and a second by Commissioner Wilder. Just briefly, this is what we've already been doing. These approximately 48 houses that we're taking down so far. We've been very efficient with the money. I think the estimate that we've received so far is about $350,000 spent roughly on those 48 structures. There may be some few bills that we still wait to come in. We've been very efficient with removing those houses, and we want to continue to do that. We've been very successful. Subsequent tax sale of selling properties. We'll have Wade McCord present to you here in the near future some updates on that and some requests on behalf of his office to not only us but the school system on how we can work to increase those numbers up to a possibility of 100 per month that we have subsequent tax sales on on blighted properties, as well as those that are 4 or 5 years behind on taxes. So this part of the program gives us the opportunity to fund this account that we've got money going into, so we make sure we don't stop and we continue to take down these structures. Right now, we've been mostly focused on the 850 burn structures that we've had, residential fires that we've had, and we've moved recently to some of the older houses on the list that are blighted that we can declare a nuisance per se, while we continue to navigate the 600 that fell through the cracks on the previous code enforcement. This $5 million is money that we were certainly were able to do under our under the ARP guidelines. Pretty clear. We would simply transfer those funds to our blight fund and be able to access those funds as we need to. We can always add to those funds, but my inclination is to give us enough money to do what we need to do now, and then we can revisit this at a later time, perhaps if not this year on the remaining funds, but next year, because we've been so efficient. And I think we've got sufficient funds with this right here to carry us through the next year or so on that. So there's not going to be any other presentations on this. We've been doing this. I'll be happy to talk process so far, but we've done 48 houses so far. We have another 30 that we'll be announcing hopefully next week, going through the process, and we'll have a total of 78 by the time we complete that. And then we have another list of over 100 that's being reviewed by our attorneys to start after that. So I think we're getting very systematic with the process. We're getting better. We certainly are more efficient on the prices of these houses, so it's going to stretch our money a long ways. And these houses that we're eliminating is how we're going to fill some of those gaps with this building that we're talking about doing, some of this other money. Allow opportunities not only to tear down those houses in the neighborhoods, but also to have investors that will come in and build homes in there, both for purchase for home ownership and also for some rentals. So we look forward to doing that. But this is just us giving ourselves the money for the blight fund. We want to fill out the paperwork on this. We want to walk through the federal system and make sure everything's done appropriately, and we have the sufficient funds to work with. And like I said, we can come back at a later time. I know I did receive a couple of folks multiplying the 850 by so many numbers to think we need a whole lot more money. But one thing I want to caution you on about overfunding things at this early venture is there's going to be more money that comes in on other projects and buckets. And we have to be careful not to designate too much money to certain areas that we could get from other places so we can continue to leverage this money. And I know you don't see anything on small business now, but I like to use that as an example as well as the evictions and mortgage assistance. There is plenty of money out there for those things. So people are going to get the help if we direct them to those places without having to come out of this ARP money. And just like infrastructure, I think there are some counties who are making a mistake by using their money on infrastructure. Yes, the ARP allows you to use this for infrastructure, and we certainly could do that. But in my opinion, we don't need to do that because we know that the federal government is now negotiating infrastructure bill through Biden's plan. They have a House and the Senate are going back and forth, and we certainly are pretty sure they're going to reach an agreement to some amount, and we'll receive some infrastructure money. And we've had projects in the mill for those that are shovel ready that we can access to. I say all that to say we don't need to get ahead of the game. This is a low hanging fruit that we're talking about doing. We're trying to leverage this money. This money's not going anywhere. It'll be in our account, and we'll have access to it to do what we need to do. I think most of you have recognized that as a commission and the mayor, we've done a good job of handling the blight this year. We have a long ways to go, but we're very steady in this, and we want to keep moving ahead. Commissioner Watkins, you have a question?
So, again, I heard everything you said, but as far as I know, we got 850 burned structures. We have, I guess, $77 million worth of ARP money. I'm not saying that we use all of it towards this problem, but I am curious, what is and I guess I'm asking for more specifics because I've served here for quite some time where we consistently tore down 100-ish, I believe 80 to 120 houses per year, and it's gotten us to where we are today. So it's a finite number that we know. I'm curious, what is the actual agreed amount total that it would take to solve this? Again, just limited to the burned structures in our community problem. And how long do we suspect it'll take to catch up to that? And yeah,
Sure.
Just even outside of whether or not we're using ARP funds to do that 100% or not, what is the overarching, I guess, blight fight plan?
Sure. First of all, we have about 850. We have about 800 now. I think the reason you really haven't made a dent in the last several years is because you haven't been where you need to be on code enforcement. So if you're taking houses down, but yet you've got this other house on the same street steadily decreasing, you're only replacing blight with blight. I think now we're addressing those issues where we're tearing a house down and we're preventing these houses from being blighted because we have a code enforcement that's working, that you appropriate the proper funds to, that will be fully staffed and doing their job, so we can stop the bleeding on that. We're being more proactive. We've also got a commissioner, tax commissioner, Wade McCord, who's done an excellent job in the last several years that you didn't have in the past when all this blight was built up, and you're able to sell these. And we're already tracing each of those houses that people buy to make sure they're applying for permits and doing their work on those. So we're stopping the bleeding to some extent. At the rate we're going now, we're probably 200 houses, 250 houses per year easily. At the rate we're going right now, I can't give you an estimate on what it's going to cost to do that many houses, because we may have a house that costs $5,000 to tear down. We may have another that costs $25,000 to tear down. I can only give you an average of what we've done so far, and it's been $7,000 to $10,000. It's been higher than that before, but also these things are seasonal. When we're in the off season of cutting grass, and I don't want to touch that subject, but when we're in the off season of cutting grass, then our public works can do more on taking houses down, which saves us some money because they'll be taking some of these down. When we must get abatement and geotechnical professionals involved because of the asbestos and lead paint that we had in a lot of these houses, we have other people that have to do that. And then, of course, when we get in season, when our public works guys need to be cutting the grass as much as they can, they'll get pulled off those jobs, and they'll cost more money to have these others come in. When we're able to group these houses and sell one in a row on the same street, it makes it more efficient for us to do that. But say all that, say this, I think $5 million is an excellent start. It's going to get us a couple years down this year and next year on the project to get rid of the houses we need to. I'd estimate if you had to do all of it, probably $8.5 million. But the reason I don't want to spend that is because if we get money next year for this same project and we use this money here, then in my opinion, we've taken money out of this bucket of the people that we could have waited on other funding for. I know your concern is this is never going to get done because in the past, and I've been here, it hasn't gotten done. I think we've at least shown as a group that we're This is important to us. We're moving forward on that. This is a priority. And this money will keep us going without having to stop and balance the checkbook on how much everything's costing. We got the right people in the right places, and it finally have the right funding. So I'm confident we're going to keep moving.
If
on
I
this.
may,
Yes, sir.
if I heard you right, you think that 8.5 would be enough to solve the problem. Let's go ahead and plan to solve the difference. To me, the difference between 5 and 8 is nominal, especially if that's the difference between 100% solving of our stuff. I'm totally for moving on with this because, I mean, right now we have the ability to do that. And even if it is allocating or encumbering the money over a 2-year period, I think since we're allocating funds for the ARP, if our plan or our goal is to eliminate these burned down houses, let's allocate what we think is the right amount to do that, even if it's encumbered and we only spend 600,000 of it in the next 8 months. That still goes down the line. I don't, rather than it not be there because 20 or 30 projects have come up and we only at 5 million. I just want to back up too. I hear you on the code enforcement, but again, I've been here for a while. I was here in the beginning of the Rickard administration, and he spent a whole lot of time ramping up code enforcement, giving them new tools, moving them to Department A, then moving them to Department B to make them better. But I think you hit on it a lot earlier that when it comes to why these neighborhoods aren't seeing the investment is, again, banking historically has not provided loans to folks to fix their porches when they fall. Home ownership has always been hard to achieve for the black individuals that live in those neighborhoods. And again, it's just a whole history of things outside of code enforcement that have affected why those neighborhoods are like this. And traditionally, communities that have solved these problems have spent a lot of money doing exactly what we're talking about now, spending money cleaning it up, but, you know, again, not doing a half measure on cleaning it up, and providing funds to developers and owners to buy stuff and fix their stuff. And we started that on the last one with $1 million, but we got $5 million of demolition to do, but we're gonna replace it with $1 million of new stuff that I guess I'm asking again in the housing support fund. And kind of like we're starting in the middle of this conversation, because if you asked me like individually how much effort do we want to put into housing support when it comes to ARP, I would say a lot, because I think rebuilding our housing market and creating ownership is key to recovering our economy. And I'm not sure, and it's your first start, so I'm all for it, but I'm just not sure where exactly we're driving, even though I, in general, like where there's nothing I disagree with here. Don't misunderstand me there.
Yeah,
But,
I understand. I disagree we need to spend any more than $5 million for a bunch of reasons. I think $5 million is sufficient. I also think that there may be other buckets of money to come up, but I also know that between the subsequent tax sales and our collections on fines, we're generating over $1.5 million of revenue that's going to go through this project as well. In just 2 years, that will make up that difference. I don't think we need to overspend, but at the same time, we just hold ourselves accountable to do what we say we're going to do. I can't answer your questions about how long you've been here and how long. I'm not Rickard. And nothing against him. I'm just not him. I know what I've set out to do. I know what some priorities are. The community has been very strong in all of our campaigns when we ran. And they were very insistent about tired of looking at this blight, and we got to do something about it. So they're going to hold you accountable, and they're going to hold me accountable, and I'm up to the challenge. I don't think we need to unnecessarily add $3.5 million. Before you know it, you'll add all these projects, and you won't be able to accomplish the goals that we have out there, like loaning money. You can't have if you put another $3.5 million in this that I don't think we need, you're taking $3.5 million from a revolving loan fund that will allow people to build up their own neighborhoods.
I see $1 million for a revolving loan fund.
You're only seeing a few million spent out of $75 million, Commissioner. You're only seeing what we've done today. I'm talking about what we can do with this money, and we're trying to leverage funds. So every time I can leverage funds, we can increase this amount, which increases the value that we do to our community. Certainly, if you want to propose to do more money, you can do that. I'm just saying that $5 million is enough for what we need to do. We're doing it in an efficient manner. We have other funds coming in, and we can always go back and add it to the well. We have $20 more million after today is done if everything passes, and we have another $38 million coming in early next year. So I do think that we're going to hold ourselves accountable to do what we said we're going to do with these funds, but I just don't want to jump the gun and spend money too quickly when there's other possibilities for matches and to be more efficient with the money. So that's all I've got to say on this issue. And you through? Go to Commissioner Lucas.
I did want to, I'm curious, like I know 850 is the burn, but when you mentioned outside like damaged properties, what is the total of blighted in our community according to our, I guess, code enforcement?
Well, that 850 does include some what I call nuisance per se structures. One reason we've been more efficient is because I, as mayor, can look at a structure with our attorneys and look at a statute and says these are they're blighted per se. Those are not what's selling out there. Commissioner McCord tells me they can sell approximately 100 houses a year. If they do that, and most of those are blighted structures, you're looking at least how many? 100 per month times 12. And then the last count, there was 2,000 houses that they considered blighted structures in Macon-Bibb County.
2,000 blighted structures in
That's
the
right.
county.
So if we're taking down the 800 something houses that are per se, some of those are blighted, and we're selling 50 to 100 on the courthouse steps every year and repurposing those. What's that? Yeah, every month. I'm sorry, every month, and repurposing those and recovering tax value on there. We're going to make a substantial impact in this situation. But standing by and taking 8 houses down in 1 year like you did the year before last didn't accomplish very much to get us caught up. Having a code enforcement who dropped 600 houses through the cracks didn't move the ball forward. Not blaming you, but I'm saying when things happen like that, that is why we're behind. I know we have all these other social economic issues. I'm not talking about that today. I'm talking purely financial. And the reason we're behind is because we've done a terrible job of managing the blight projects and putting the funds toward it. And we have a separate code enforcement job with a good leader who's made good impacts, and we'll bring a presentation to you. You get the monthly reports just like everybody should get those reports. Last year we had 79 blight taxes. This year, in the first 6 months, we've had 300. Last year you took down 4 houses, and this 4 months we've taken down 48 houses. So
back to the previous administration, last year was all of COVID. We stopped everything during COVID.
Last year you did it.
But in fairness to the previous administration, he consistently for 8+ years, maybe 10 years, I forget, he was elected for 14 years. But consistently 80 to 120 houses a year is what was funded in the budget and completed by them. Because that is roughly the budget you inherited when we started this in January, and we've torn down about 50 houses 6 months or half point into the year, which signifies to me that we're on pace to meet the previous average minus COVID of 80 to 120 a year, which firmly puts us where we always are. Because again, when it comes to the budget, we've only budgeted the same amount. As a matter of fact, that's decreased over the years and stuff and that's why we're still here, because we know that things cost millions at this point at $8.5 million, but we decide to go with another number. But I'm voting yes to this because I want the $5 million because that's a good start, so I'll yield. But it's just the point that at some point we're going to have to plan for the whole thing to accomplish the whole thing. But I yield.
Point well taken. Thank you, Commissioner Watts. Commissioner Lucas?
Yeah, I'm just real happy to see all of the discussion going on concerning housing services, and I was glad to hear that Newtown and Historic Macon are going to be taking care of some things that are going to really benefit the entire community. I was glad to see they were going to do a house in Shirley Hills in your district, but I would like to see people come a little bit farther east, keep coming east. And the only other thing that I would like to add to the discussion is to make sure that when we're talking about alleviating blight in low-income areas, that we also look at the trend toward creating more low-income areas in several neighborhoods that are kind of transitioning. We don't need to look around, and we've done all of this work all over, and then we look at these areas that could have been salvaged and could have that healthy mix of ownership and rental, and we didn't do anything about it. So I just keep saying that, and you're going to hear it over and over and over. These neighborhoods need to be mainly home ownership. And I can point out 2 of them, and I know the rest of you can point out another one. John Kennedy Drive over that area is transitioning. That used to be an area that was the place where teachers lived. Nice homes, but some of those are in transition, that neighborhood. So what I'm saying is, while we're devoting all of this time and the effort, and we're going to see results, we need to make sure that we aren't back here letting these other neighborhoods slip into that same kind of situation where you have an overabundance of rental property and lower property values when we could have maybe done something. So I would just strongly urge us to look at these trends in some of these neighborhoods and make sure we don't allow them to slip into a bad place. That's all.
I agree. Thank you, Commissioner Lucas. Commissioner Clark?
Mine's much less esoteric. I completely agree with you, Commissioner Lucas. But I was hoping just for the clarification for the public. So, I know we just had a back and forth that $5 million isn't enough to get the bulk of the blight work done. But $5 million is a lot of money. I was hoping that maybe Julie or Michael or you, Mr. Mayor, could explain the process of encumbering these dollars and the deadline, so the public understands that we don't have to spend this money tomorrow, and that we're setting up a timeline and everything, and how that encumbering works with the federal guidelines.
Sure, good question. And I spoke about the numbers earlier, and I told we had 2 amounts, but there are a few deadlines and time expirations on these, so I'll let Ms. Moore with strategic budget and planning address that issue.
We are currently trying to encumber funds before our first reporting that will come in August. This $37 million that we've received, we would want that encumbered by this time next year, and so this is our first chance at it with the $18 million that's been presented. We have until December of 24 to really encumber it all, but I think that as we learned during the CARES experience, you want to do the first tranche that you get that $37 million, make sure you spent that. As you remember, we did not end up getting the second tranche from the state. So we want to be very thoughtful and forward moving, and also trying to address some immediate needs in the community.
Thank you. That answer your question, Pro Tem Clark? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Moore. We do have a motion and second, and it seems to be no further discussion on this particular issue. So I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the matter, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries, along with, I hear Commissioner Wynn on there, will be sent to consent agenda. Thank you. We're going to move on to item E, which is an ordinance to authorize appropriation of up to $4 million American Rescue Plan Act funds for the provision of services to disproportionately impacted communities in the form of housing support and services for the unhoused by supporting Brookdale Resource Center. A motion is sponsored by myself, as well as Mayor Pro Tem Clark and Commissioner Raymond Wilder, and maybe others. Commissioner Bronson, was you on there? Okay, not Commissioner Bronson. One of you gentlemen like to make that motion? I got a motion by Pro Tem Clark, a second by Commissioner Wilder. Commissioner Clark, do you have a question?
I really just looking out here and seeing Spencer and Spencer Hawkins, who has worked overtime to make sure that this Brookdale has gotten to this point in front of this body. He has spent hours and hours away from his family, and has created a safe space for families that are in need across this county. And I did not want that to go unnoticed in front of this body. And I very much appreciate you, and I thank your family for lending you to us because lives were surely saved over there. And thank you, Spencer.
Commissioner Tillman.
Well, I always appreciate acknowledging employers that we pay, but I want to acknowledge those volunteers that we don't pay. they've done a great job over there as well. So if you can volunteer and continue to volunteer, we need more volunteers and volunteerism. And that's what we need. What I wanted to bring up is the mayor has challenged us, and I don't mean the word challenge, but during this early administration, some of us, and I think I was one of them, that said I didn't want to be in the homeless business. We do have a true need for homelessness in our community. I think we've dressed this name up by calling it the Brookdale Warming Center. That is just not for homeless folks. It's for folks that can't take care of themselves and is on the edge of losing something. So I woke up this morning, I saw an email from somebody at 3 a.m. in the morning. And so I would just say this. I think at some point, because our government has been closed, at some point, we're going to have, or we should have, a meeting and a discussion to allow folks to come and share their thoughts on this warming center. But I will tell you, just like an animal shelter or warming center or a transfer station or a landfill, there's always going to be folks that just say, I don't want it in my backyard. But I would caution you to say, if you don't want it in your backyard, then tell me where you want it and where is it acceptable. And so these are issues that we all have supported. These are democratic models. And so, but we've got to have input from the public, and I think that is what's missing. The governor has relinquished his, what I call, whole debacle on us because of COVID. So folks can come and express themselves, because we as commissioners, God knows we received an earful from this public about a number of things because they have not been able to express themselves. And our attorney, who has shared some thoughts and messages, has not shared probably as many as the conversations of folks having out there. So I would just caution us when we are saying what we don't want and where, is that we're going to have I'm hoping a public discussion and give folks an opportunity to share their thoughts. But we have to take care of those that's least fortunate. And I've gotten on board with this thing. I've gotten some resistance, and folks have said, why are you doing this, regardless of what you're doing? But the whole thing was when, and I don't think the mayor went out and bought it because Al Tillman said, we don't own it. Well, a couple of weeks later, we end up buying it and we own it. So I think we have to do what we can. We have to do what we can to help these folks. And so I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman. Commissioner Jones?
Mr. Mayor, and kind of piggybacking on what Commissioner Tillman's saying, and I think that's a valid point. And I would ask you, because there are some out there who don't want it in their neighborhood. I've had a call recently. But if you could just briefly tell us, for the public's sake, the mission about the transition, the importance of transitioning people from homeless to jobs, to a neighborhood, to back home, those type of things, just for the public's sake, because they don't hear all our meetings, so maybe they'll hear this one.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. I'll be happy to do that. And I appreciate our EMA director being here today. Director Hawkins, if I miss something, feel free to correct me. Brookdale Warming Center has been like nothing else that I've seen. And I don't just say that because I'm the mayor of Macon and I'm sitting here with commissioners. We have received phone call after phone call from people all across the southeast United States asking, how do you do this? How did you put this together? How did you get the buy-in? How are you funding this? I told you in the very beginning that we stepped out on faith on this. And we knew that we had to do this because of the circumstances involved. And we committed to do that in the very beginning. And I appreciate this commission being very patient over the last several months while we continue to raise money and continue to try to help people out there. Just to give you a few numbers, and I hate to even use numbers because it don't tell the story. These are lives, and if I knew all 600 people who come through there, I'd say their name one by one. We've had 600 people come through the center. Shortest stay is 2 days, the longest stay is 90 days. We've had 100 jobs that have been accepted through the warming center. 100. We've had 25 people who are reunited with their family members outside of Macon-Bibb County through the sheriff's money that he got from a foundation gift to do such a thing. More importantly, we have 45 people who have been placed into housing. I don't think anyone else can say that outside maybe the Macon Housing Authority, and that's their only job, one of their main jobs. 45 people transitioning to housing is a big deal. We have numerous children that, but for the warming center, would not have gotten any education or severely challenged by being in a car without the internet, because a lot of them were living in cars or in places where no heat. At one point in time, we had 22 there, and the school system stepped up, and you see some numbers on the screen there. The school system stepped up at that time, and they helped us out with the virtual learning. Salvation Army stepped up and helped us out with the food in the beginning. You can look at those numbers there, the job placements, the housing placements, all the community, look at all the community partners we've had. This is not a situation where we're trying to put a Band-Aid, and I get insulted when people say we're putting a Band-Aid on something. You know, the only way to cure homelessness is to provide housing. If you hadn't heard anything today during this conversation, you've heard a lot about housing. And that's our priority here, is to get people in the transition into housing, not just to put a Band-Aid on them. Yes, we need to feed them. Yes, we need to provide shelter and clothing, but we want these folks to receive the full benefit of the American dream and what we offer here in Macon-Bibb County. And that means, and their power was shut off. And they came there and they got warmth and love and food at the center. Yes, on occasion you're going to have people that take advantage of the system. That simply happens. But you don't know the cards that they've been dealt, and you haven't walked in their shoes. So this program is a true program about getting people from point A to point B, which is housing. The need for all this housing, and I'm glad that Bethany talked about educating people, because one of the challenges, you can't just give a housing to a person that has been going through this homelessness for a while. You have to make sure that they've got the wraparound services they need, the support they need, the know-how they need to be able to pay their bills. To know that you just don't pay your check just doesn't go to pay maintenance, it goes to pay all kind of other things that you have to do there. Transportation is available to and from there. We've had 600 people go to and from there without transportation issues. We're trying to consolidate services there, and you'll hear more about it on our last agenda item today. But we are transitioning to housing, and that's what's more important to me. It's providing houses and opportunities for these folks. Once we have a final solution on here, we fund this money. We'll talk about the management of that operation later time today. We'll have a plan where people go into there, they get assessed, they get all the paperwork they need. You know, I talked about it before, but it probably didn't list on there how many people have an ID now that never had an ID. How many people that actually have a birth certificate? 150. Thank you. 150 have IDs that never had an ID before. Birth certificates, things that we take for granted. We have the Judge Adams coming out there to talk to people about how do you get this old marijuana charge expunged so you can actually get a job and won't have to be homeless. So, excuse me. When you talk about put a Band-Aid, it's insulting. And I appreciate the question, Commissioner Jones, but we have made real change on a shoestring budget for 7 months because we reached out on faith. And I've talked to the sheriff. There's not been an increase in any kind of incidents out there other than they had before. I can tell you what it has done. It's got police officers going to that neighborhood 2 and 3 times a day to change shifts. That's a police presence they haven't seen before. It's got many volunteers throughout our community who's gone through there and did a C-click fix to get an illegal dump fixed. It's got our code enforcement going there multiple times to mark houses that need to come down. It's got investors looking at areas around Payne City on how we can restore that neighborhood. It's got businesses come to us and letting us know that there's other blighted properties that are businesses there that we need to get a blight tax on. It's drawn attention for the right reasons to that area. These people deserve this chance. I don't want to hear not my backyard. That's another insulting comment. Just like the landfill. We don't have a landfill in Macon now because nobody wants it in their neighborhood. I don't necessarily blame them. But that's why we don't have a landfill. It's closing, and we're going to be outside of Macon all the time because nobody wants it in your yard. These are people. These are human beings. They're going to be well maintained and controlled in that situation to get the help that they need. So we're making positive change. I'm asking this commission to appropriate at this time $4 million for those services. And we'll come back later on today to talk about the management portion of that. This is just the appropriation. Nothing happens until you decide how you're going to spend that money at a later junction, and hopefully today. So I hope that answers your questions, Commissioner Jones, and I'll take any follow-up that you may have.
And thank you for that, because I learned a lot. And that screen that appeared, I'd like to have a copy of that. If our
Sure.
technical people can email us that, because the public doesn't know all of that. I didn't know all of that. So it's been a booming success, and I commend you and all the people who've been involved in it. It's definitely a positive. And I think if the public knows all of that, then that will win some of the naysayers over.
I think so, and I think the public has bought in. I think many volunteer hours and many children have been through there, and they can get a first-hand look at these are real folks that don't believe all the bad stories you hear about them. And like I said, there's always exceptions.
Results are phenomenal, and that's what's so encouraging.
Yeah, and we hope that under the new management, we'll have all the processes through the computer, get all the data, and we'll be able to check all this information. But we'll talk about that shortly. I appreciate it. Sorry it's taking so long. Commissioner Watkins.
So again, it's hard for me to imagine a person who would be about alleviating homelessness for people being afflicted by it. It's hard for me to imagine a person being opposed to that. I know I'm not. But I do have questions. Like I see this 4 million number, and just thinking about the conversation we had previously, like how much did we spend at the Brookdale Center, I guess, year to date? It's been about 6 months of being open.
The county?
Budget to run that place.
The county spent about $150,000, if I recall. The rest of that money was raised.
The rest,
but
I'm not sure.
The total amount per year with temporary services was probably amount to about $1 million if you had to run it on temporary services. On permanent staff and other cost-efficient measures and other donations, you probably could do that on $700,000 a year. That's what we estimate.
I guess right now this year we're tracking to spend about $500,000 there.
Yes, sir. Or a little bit less than that, probably.
I guess the difference between the $500,000 we spend now and the $1 million that we could spend in a year would be providing more intense wraparound services and just building out the experience for those having to use the service.
Yeah, I think the difference is you talking about why is it a different amount? I'm not sure of your question.
Trying to make sense of the 4 million number here after you just said it cost $500,000 to run it for the year.
I think you know the answer to the 4 million, but I don't want to get into other items that we have to talk on the agenda. But the
or to manage multiple years in a,
that's correct.
And I would also assume that that's a very loose number created based off of, I guess, again, which just kind of contradicts what we just got through talking about on the other piece of housing, which is I'm trying to make sense of your logics and how stuff works.
Okay.
Like what guidance are we doing? So this is for a multiple year experience.
Yeah. So let me be more clear. The 4 million I've always mentioned. I hope I have. If not, I've been repeating myself at night in my sleep. But I think I've always said $4 million was what I call PPP. It's going to be public, our $4 million, private $4 million contribution, and for philanthropy, we want to raise $4 million. Ideal situation would allow us to only contribute $4 million and get the other amounts matched. We believe that will be sufficient for 10 to 15 years to make sure this is a fully sustainable project and not a Band-Aid. And we'll hear more about that later today, but you know, if we ran this from the start from an independent management company, it probably could have done. You probably could do it for $700,000 a year. But when you run it as a government, when you have to have temporary services because you don't have the employees designated to that, and you hire outside people to do food instead of doing it yourself, and you pay outside washer and dryer because you don't have the facilities there, it does get a little bit more expensive. But I think the proposal you're here later on today is going to address all those issues. This is a multiple year plan. with a easy out for either side that we'll present later on. But while we're on this subject, this $4 million is an amount that I've asked based on those items there. We also have applied for a grant, and we're going through that process of working out the details on that we discussed before. We want to have commercial washers and dryers there so people can wash their own clothes as part of their just general life experiences. Also, instead of having to pay people to wash your linens outside of there and send them out for an expense, they will wash them there and teach those things there. We've also asked for showers, indoor showers. Right now at the location, we have outdoor units, 1 or 2 units there that are outdoors under a tent. Not the best case scenario, but we are going to get pricing and go through the procurement process for this grant that won't cost us any money for 12 showers there, 6 male, 6 female. We're upgrading the Wi-Fi there with the current school restrictions there. It created some challenges for people going online to Indeed and submitting job applications, and we don't want any hindrances to that. So we're going to upgrade the Wi-Fi there. The school system did take out some of the kitchen equipment that we think we could be more efficient on providing the meals there in-house. So we've included purchasing some school equipment there. Spencer, did I leave anything out? Sorry, most importantly. Cots are okay to sleep on when you don't have any other choice, but we have looked at purchasing 200 beds that are not too bulky but comfortable, and having places for people to sleep on instead of just a cot. And we think that they deserve that, having a mattress and a pillow as well as the cot, and we certainly appreciated that we had there. Those expenses are those that we're going to have with the grant that we have included in the whole deal, but this $4 million is strictly to appropriate the money for future management that we'll discuss later today.
So, and I got a little confused then. So is this $4 million, portion of it is operations, and then a chunk of it is also, I guess, the brick and mortars and the equipment that you mentioned earlier?
No, sir. None of that's brick and mortar. That's an outside grant that we already have. We're just working through the process to make sure we can spend it in the manner that the grant calls for.
Just for my curiosity, that grant there is also from a secret entity?
No, that's an ECD grant. Ms. Moore shaking her head. ESG grant that we've had.
We're making ESG grant improvements to.
Yeah. We identified early on the potential of having that done, and we wanted to wait because there's no sense to applying for the grant and getting the money for a building we didn't own. So we waited until we purchased the building from the school system before going through that process, and then of course we have to use our procurement process. But at the same time, we need to make sure what's covered under the grant, so we don't purchase anything that's not covered by the grant, so we can transfer that responsibility to someone else or allocate part of these funds. These funds are strictly for management and other items that you'll see later.
I'm understanding right. So this is like the 4 million number is a big number. It can give someone sticker shock, but it's not us writing a check for $4 million. It's encumbering that into an account and drawing it down as needed.
No, it's $4 million that we're going to appropriate for this, and if we happen to sign a management agreement with someone, it'll be bound by that contract, and it could be all $4 million over a period of time. You know, we're looking for at least a minimal 5-year commitment with a potential 10-year commitment on this management money.
Okay, so yeah, it just be drawn down over. We're allocating it now, but it won't be writing a check to anybody for that amount of money.
It will if the contract calls for that.
I mean, but again, I'm just trying to make sure we're on the same page. You're not saying that we're writing one check for $4 million. You're saying that we draw it down like over quarters or months or something, right?
No, well, I'm saying right now all we're doing is appropriating. When we come back, I'm going to be asking for you to write a check for $4 million to a management company.
Oh, where are we going and when do we come back? I'm sorry.
That's the $4 million for the Brookdale Resource Center. Please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously, be sent to the consent agenda. Going to move on to item F is an ordinance to authorize the appropriation of up to $3 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds to visit Macon for the mitigation of negative economic impacts of COVID-19 in the form of aid to tourism, travel, hospitality industries, sponsored by myself and many other commissioners. Can I get a motion in a second? Yes, sir.
Before you get that motion, it just I'm not gonna be able to let the moment pass without revisiting. I would like to reconsider the motion from earlier to add items to the agenda to amend our ARP budget to include consideration for the Daybreak homeless service. It's just a little bit disturbing to me that as we're talking about allocating funds for homelessness, that one of the long-term providers of homeless services in our community is not in that consideration. So again, I would like to make that motion.
Okay. For a couple of you that were not here earlier, Commissioner Watkins made a motion that failed, and that motion was to give $1 million to Loaves and Fishes, $1 million to Daybreak, as items that be added to this agenda. It did not receive 5 votes. Certainly, I'm not in favor of adding those items for other reasons, just for what that's worth. But now he's asking again, because I think there's Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Tillman are now here to renew that motion to add those motion for reconsideration of both of those items. So that's his motion. Is there a second for reconsideration? Looks like Commissioner Bronson wants to second that. We'll start with the first item for reconsideration. Does he like to give $1 million of ARP money to Loaves and Fishes? We have a motion and a second.
That's simply to add to the agenda, though.
Add to the agenda.
Yes, still trying to add it to the agenda, and I'd like to.
Okay.
And I'd like to point out that that's again requested over 2 years.
Yeah.
$1 million, but over a 2-year period.
$1 million over a 2-year period? Okay. This is just a reconsideration to add it to the agenda. It failed to get added to the agenda earlier. So we'll take we got a second already, Bronson. Yeah. This is just to add it to there. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, we got 4 noes out of 7. 8 out of 8. 4 noes, 4 yeses. Okay, motion fails. We'll do the same thing for Daybreak. Assume we got a motion by Commissioner Watkins, second by Commissioner Bronson for reconsideration. Commissioner Lucas, do you have something? Did you have something?
To be on the.
Okay. I got you. We had a motion and a second. We'll take a vote on that as well. Commissioner Bronson, you have a question?
Hey, so just to piggyback here, right? So I get where Commissioner Watkins is coming from. Right? We want to at least acknowledge those organizations that have been doing the work for years. I, for one, definitely support Daybreak on this end, and I think it's very important that while we are supporting an organization which is led by you, Mr. Mayor, I'm in full support of Brookdale Warming Center. Let me make sure I say that piece. But I'm also in support of those organizations that have been working prior to this administration getting there and have been actually on the grounds doing the work. And granted, while they are partnering with the Brookdale Warming Center, everyone is not necessarily going to the Brookdale Warming Center. Some people still need to go to Daybreak. Some people still need to go to the Methodist church down the road. Some people still need to go to Loaves and Fishes. So while we are voting on that piece, I really want you guys to consider the concept of that piece, that we do have organizations that are still operating day-to-day business, doing that particular job on that end. So I just want to make sure I put that piece out.
I appreciate that, and I
Roger,
understand that,
sir.
Commissioner Bronson. I think I don't know that the issue is necessarily not necessarily awarding any funds. I think the issue right now is adding to this agenda for discussion today. So we do have a motion and second on that, and all those in favor of adding it, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Okay. Same vote, 4-4. Okay. Commissioner, we were only asking to add or where's she? I'm sorry. Commissioner Wynn, we're only talking about adding or failing. Yeah, so there's no need to comment on that. We're not having a discussion on it, just whether or not we can add it. Okay, we've got we're going to move on to the ordinance that I started out with. I've already read that. Commissioner Tillman, you got Commissioner Watkins. Get your
So he's saying that it was a 4-4 tie. So did you? So on a 4-4 tie, what we don't.
It takes 5 votes to add it.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was thinking about the tie vote.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know what I feel, so if I had to vote, it would be no. All right. we're gonna move on to F. An ordinance to authorize appropriation of $3 million in American Rescue Plan Acts to visit Macon. Sponsored by myself and others. I haven't taken a motion second on this, have I? Okay. That's my motion. Can I get a second? Second by Commissioner Bronson. I'm on one to speak on this today, so I'll be happy to reread what I just read. But as we discussed before, we believe that all of our partners in the tourism industry who's been hit pretty hard by the pandemic and decreased amounts of money to them to the tune of almost $2 million that they've lost in simple revenue from 2019 over to 2020 year and moving to 2021 for loss of income and revenue. I did not include money in the budget that you unanimously agreed to for these. At that time, we told them how valuable we were. They want to make sure that we redirect some funding from them from another source. This is that other source. This money will be used to make them whole, each and every one of them, as well as monies to create incentives to bring business to Macon-Bibb County, because we're trying to revitalize the tourism industry, which provides great economic benefit to Macon-Bibb County. That incentive money will be used by Visit Macon, a trusted partner of ours who does this year-to-year basis, to award grants and contracts for bring business into Macon, to incentivize perhaps movie industries and things to do movies here, and to do all those things to promote tourism in Macon-Bibb County. So that is what the money is used for. Was there a specific question for you, Ms. Lucas, or is your light still on from before?
You can cut it off.
Okay, thank you. So the idea now is to do $3 million. There is an opportunity in the future, and I hate to say this now because I don't want to open up a conversation on that, to revisit some tourism money or some other items that can be used for that. But I want to bring that back up later on. In particular, there's a couple of items that need to be taken care of from a build-out standpoint that you can use tourism dollars for, but I don't think it's appropriate now to act on that until we get the regulations. But I know this is something we're certainly able to do. And I see Commissioner Watkins' light on, so I'll go ahead and say what I was going to say. One of the things we talked about before, some improvements to something like the Carolyn Creighton Park, as well as the train outside. We didn't want to use general funding money before to repair and paint and do all the things necessary for that train. We believe that you can do the ARP money for that as part of the tourism thing, and we're including a package that we'll present to you later on to make improvements to that, as well as the fountain down there and some bridge and some interest that I know Ms. Lucas has interest in. We've done a walkthrough. Mr. Murphy is getting some prices to us, but we're not in a position to make a recommendation at this time. We do believe that adds value, as well as all the lighting and the ball fields down there to generate income for our community. So those ideas are not fleshed out yet and not ready to present those to you now, but keep in mind that those things would be coming and would be possibilities there. So this money is just for what I said it's for, to reimburse all the folks the money they lost, and to use the other part of the money for tourism and economic impact and incentives. So Commissioner Watkins, you had a question?
Is there a greater detailed document, or is this $3 million get detailed and broken down, I guess, by affected business, or is that left up to the discretion of the Visitors Bureau?
Visit Macon is going to be in charge of these funds, so we'll be giving the money to them. Of course, we'll be able to track the money because honestly, the reason this is on here is because I've been contacted by Harold Young with the Tubman, with Jim McClendon, with Susan Wells, all of our partners there. They're doing their budget because they're on a fiscal year, and certainly they were anticipating the funds for this coming in, and they want to be able to do their budget for the whole year. So that money will go through him, and he will keep accounting on how he spends that money. So thank you for that question.
And maybe you're addressing it through a different appropriation, but like I know in our county budget, the golf course, like we didn't budget it. I know the justification we were going to use ARP funds to cover that shortage, and there were a few other, maybe the auditorium and the Centralplex as well. So
Yes,
is that a different appropriation that we'll see, or is that coming from here?
I would expect the plan would be is the county has suffered losses ourselves, and at some point in time when we get the proper tool to evaluate that they're working on now on how to quantify our losses, those will be part of those for consideration. That will come back to this commission at a later date.
For but for like I don't know, like a museum that was on our budget last year, I guess quasi-governmental museum, and we zeroed them out, that would be whether or not they get that, whatever amount they get is subject to not the historical nature, but the process with the CVB or the
Yes.
visit making?
That's correct.
Okay.
The applicable percentages. And just for future, I don't, like I said, I don't want to get too deep down this rabbit hole, but I do want to make sure that we're clear on this. We have been in constant conversations with all the museums, and we're putting a plan in place that will allow them to sustain the funding with outside the general fund for a long-term basis. Some of the ways we're doing this is, number one, the legislature allowed a 7% to 8% increase, a 1% increase that they have not recognized the benefit of because of the pandemic last year. We also have the new Airbnb law that went into effect July 1st, where when you book something on Airbnb, that money's going to automatically do there, and we're updating our software through Wade McCord's office to know how many people. Some of this money will be used to make sure that we have the system to make sure that all the hotels and motels in Macon-Bibb County that are supposed to be paying this tax are paying the tax, because we have a lot of them that are cheating the system. We're looking at that. County Manager Dr. Moffitt has been working with our either ACCG or GMA. They have systems in place where they can test and police this, and we know that we have been losing money, so we're going to make sure we do that enforcement part on there. Also, we are going to have extra money in for that, as well as bringing the possibility to you in the near future to remove one of our own, the Toposophy off the hotel motel tax, which generally I believe accumulates about $400,000 or $500,000, which will be then reappropriated to all those museums based on the percentage that they get. And we're also reevaluating those percentages that each and every one of them get to make sure they're fair and equitably distributed, and to make sure that we have some type of a rubric to know that they're doing everything they can to increase their own business, because we need to make sure they're budgeting properly and make sure they're advertising properly to increase their own business and grow their entity, and not strictly relying on government funding. So those are all the possibilities that we have to increase funding. This is what that money is for, and I'm certainly, I think they're definitely in need of this money. I certainly trust Visit Macon, think they've done an excellent job, and I know that each and every one of these museums will appreciate your vote on this today and next Tuesday, so they can go ahead and solidify their budget. So we do have a motion and second. If we have no additional questions, I call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. Just to keep you up on time, we do have 4 more items, plus a mowing item that we did add to the agenda, and an alcohol license that we forgot to do. We have a presentations from Historic Macon, an executive session, and then one memorandum of understanding to do. We do have lunch that'll be here in the next. It is here. So just talking to the commissioners about what's your preference. You want to do a few more of these items and get to a presentation and then stop, and then we'll have lunch, come back, go to executive session and presentation, and then complete the day, or what's your preference? Finished? Okay. We'll keep on. All righty. So right now we're going to move on to item G. Item G is an ordinance to appropriate $1 million American Rescue Plan funds for mitigation of negative economic impacts COVID-19 in the form of household assistance for food programs for addressing food desert areas. That is sponsored by myself as well as many others on the commission. Who would like to make that motion? Got a motion by Commissioner Pro Tem Clark, a second by Commissioner Bronson. This time I know several of you guys, I say you guys loosely, has been working on this food desert. Commissioners Bronson, Watkins, and Clark. Commissioner Clark, will you like to start the conversation?
I just first I want to thank Commissioner Watkins and Commissioner Bronson on the work we've done together. It's we've missed each other a couple of times, but I think we're all headed in the right direction. I think what we've the conclusion that we've come to in the drafting of resolutions is that ECD has a program set up for small businesses that fits into these guidelines. They have looked to New Orleans, a program called the Fresh Food Retail Initiative. And the Fresh Food Retail Initiative, in a nutshell, was a program that was used post-Katrina, using federal aid dollars to put into a revolving loan fund. It's been incredibly successful, and that's been the rubric that they use to draw up the guidelines at ECD and with the help of the UDA. I know that Commissioner Watkins and I spoke about us maybe needing to legislate the gray area in this to make sure that these funds are specifically used for the food desert. I believe that the federal guidelines, after speaking to the budget director, require that. I'm very much open to legislating a resolution on food deserts in particular at a later date, but I would like to see, Julie, if you'll speak to that at some point about how these have to be used for this in this bucket that you've that we're setting aside today. But I think just more globally, I think it's important for us to talk about the need. I think we've heard, from Newtown, we've heard from Historic Macon, and I think the United Way numbers on food insecurity from a couple of years back really tell the story of why this is necessary. Of course, because of COVID, communities that are impacted by food insecurity are disproportionately impacted further by food insecurity. But just before COVID, these were our numbers for Macon-Bibb County. We had a food insecurity rate of 21.8%. That represents 33,590 of our neighbors. 9,750 of those are children. And that's a shortfall of about $16,658,000. So the next couple of items put together add up to an initial investment of roughly $2.5 million, many of which is not the initial investment will be paid back because it is a revolving loan fund for retailers and people that are trying to operate in low-income census tracts to open grocery stores to alleviate this food insecurity problem that we have. I do think it is a drop in the bucket considering that we have a $16 million shortfall. It's almost $17 million shortfall. But it is a start, and it is an investment similar to how we heard from Newtown, how we heard from Historic Macon, that will pay itself back so we can put more money into this problem at a further date. I think that is, and when you look at the program in New Orleans, it has been incredibly successful. That number that their initial investment in their revolving loan fund is I don't remember what it is, but it's millions of dollars over what it was in the initial investment. So it has been incredibly successful, and I'm very comfortable with the idea that these dollars will be spent in low-income census tracts, and because that's where this has been affected. I mean, you look at, I know that this body and us that, were in last election cycle, we talked a lot about food deserts with Kroger leaving. We've looked at our neighbors start co-ops. We've looked at our neighbors negotiate rental space for grocery stores. The problem that they have is the funding to get the grocery store in that retailer just isn't there. And this is the tool that they need. This is the tool that they're asking for. And so I'm incredibly grateful for, especially Commissioner Watkins, for showing me the New Orleans model. It works, and I think it can be applied here. And I'm incredibly grateful for Commissioner Lucas and Commissioner Bronson in particular to y'all. I mean, I think when we talk about food deserts, it was just so traumatic that when Kroger left, that's what we think about. We think about the Pinona corridor, and that is not isolated. It is systemic, and it is. And y'all have done yeoman's work at making sure that the other areas where this problem impacts our neighbors are lifted up. So thank you. But that's my pitch. So and I don't have to yield. But anyway, Julie, I would appreciate if you talked about how this is protected by, not protected, but is required to be spent on issues of food security and insecurity, and how the guidelines federally kind of pocket that for that use.
In reading the Federal Registry and description of all the ways that this money can be spent, we feel very comfortable that anything addressing food insecurity is an eligible use. And that's why you'll see the next three proposals, because we feel like this is all something that would begin to address food insecurity in our community from three different angles. Just a reminder, what you see highlighted is the qualified census tract area, and any work that we're doing in that large purple area is going to be reported to the federal government, and they see that as a check mark, as okay, then you're using this money the way we intended for you to use it if you are using it in one of these census tracts. So we also feel very comfortable that the food desert that you're looking to achieve some growth in is absolutely in that qualified census tract.
Thank you. And we'll bring you back just a moment and talk about the other capital and food bank. Commissioner Lucas?
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask that we look at the issue of lunch at the senior center. A number of the seniors qualify, some of them, a very small number, qualify for a lunch program at the senior center through the Area Agency on Aging, but there are an awful lot of other seniors who end up bringing their own lunch, which is not necessarily the best way to go. There are a lot of things that come in with food, but if you have all of the folks included who attend the senior center and they're about to really rev it back up and get a whole lot of seniors back in with those programs, daily programs, I would like to see us find a way to provide lunch for all of the seniors that are attending the programs at the Senior Citizen Center. And I think it would help with not only providing food for an underserved population, but it would ensure that the food is safe, you know, for everybody, because everybody doesn't bring safe stuff. I'm just trying to be cute with it. But I think in Atlanta, I think Dr. Ficklin told me a few years ago, he went to a senior center in Atlanta and all the lunches were provided, and I think the price was what, $1 and something per, lower than that, 75 cents. Anyway, I think with this money, which is all of our money coming back to us, that would be a real good use, and it would eliminate that problem of folks having to bring their lunch, especially our seniors. So I would respectfully ask that be added to this. I don't need to offer any kind of amendment or anything. I don't think there's anybody who would disagree with that.
Right. I think we got a consensus on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner
Good.
Lucas.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tillman?
I was gonna say if she buy me lunch, I can solve it for her.
There you go.
Provide $21,000+ to Meals on Wheels. I'm a former board member. We just give them to add it. They go down there and give them lunch.
At their waiting list and maybe provide food there, but also provide food at the senior center.
I think they can tap into that money as well as this next one that we're going to do. So I appreciate the comments. And now, which senior center is that? Which senior center is that?
Get.
All right, thank you. All right. We have a motion and a second. It appears no further discussion on this issue. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. That motion carries. Will be sent to consent agenda. We're going to move on to item H, which is an ordinance to authorize the appropriation of $1 million in American Rescue Act funds for the mitigation of negative economic impact of COVID-19 in the form of household assistance for food programs by supporting the Middle Georgia Food Bank and others, sponsored by most everybody on this commission. Would someone like to make that motion? Got a motion by Bronson, second by Clark. At this time, I'd ask Ms. Moore to come back up. Now, this is one for $1 million. We wanted to tell you about the opportunity that we have to match, have a match, our $1 million to be a match of up to $3 million in addition to that, and what it can be used for. And our goal into doing this is to make sure that we accomplish that match and be able to utilize those funds. So, Ms. Moore, if you just tell us briefly a little bit about that.
An opportunity to apply through a grant that will be administered through DCA, the state of Georgia, and it's really a 75% match. And what we're asking is for you all to allow us up to $1 million that would provide for a 25% match if we could come up with a $4 million capital investment. likely with the Middle Georgia Food Bank, there might be others. This is an opportunity to write for the grant, so we wanted to have your approval of the match before Sharita and I spend a lot of time on webinars and writing the grant. And speaking with Middle Georgia Food Bank, they have already compiled a list of capital needs of what they could use, and as we learn more details, we'll bring back how that award submission goes.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. And I think anytime we have a chance to leverage funds, I know Commissioner Clark was talking about $2.5 million. This is another $3 million added to that, actually $3 million in addition to that. And certainly, I think the rules on that particular thing are relaxed, so we can use those for capital as well to help alleviate some of the issues we have in the food desert. So certainly, I think most folks are going to support that. So we appreciate that. That's another very important item. It's another $1 million with hopefully a $3 million match. You're waving your hand at me. You have a question?
Mr. Mayor, I just want to clarify that the language in this ordinance also approves, to the extent that we are awarded that grant from Department of Community Affairs, that it approves the acceptance of that grant, so it wouldn't have to come back to commission.
Okay. So if we approve this, it won't come back for you. We'll automatically accept that. So I appreciate that distinguishing that. We do have a motion and second. It appears no further discussion on this particular item. I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Be sent to consent agenda. Going to move on to item I, which is authorization to appropriate up to $500,000 in American Rescue Act funds for mitigation of negative impact of COVID-19 in the form of household assistance for food programs by supporting neighborhood food distributions, sponsored by myself and the same commissioners. Would someone like to make that motion? Got a motion by Commissioner Clark, second by Commissioner Wilder. At this time, I think it's self-explanatory on the information you received, but if Commissioner Clark or someone wants to make some comments on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly talk about, since we're talking about how we leverage these things and make these dollars go further than just the number on the piece of paper. I think we're all super familiar with the farmers market system that we have around town. This $500,000 would allow farmers markets around town to apply for these dollars, and one way that we can make these dollars go further is most of these organizations are eligible for the Double SNAP program, and they utilize a Double SNAP program, which means that if you use your EBT card to purchase fresh food at one of these markets, your benefits double. And so this isn't just an investment in food co-ops or neighborhood co-ops or farmers markets as we know it. It gives them startup capital to get these things going, but it also, once they're up and going and the eligible participants, the participants that are eligible for double SNAP, that money will go further. So I just wanted to reiterate that possibility.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Anyone else in that regard? Commissioner Watkins?
I just wanted to add for like future planning, and I thought Seth did a great job on, Commissioner Clark did a great job on kind of laying out our ideas and concepts here. But like I say, food insecurity here is a major issue. We just allocated, or in the process of allocating, about $2.5 million. Again, got kind of the same concerns that when we talk about food and grocery stores and even farmers market, perishable items, that realizing that we very well may have to come back for more funding, because it's not a lot of bread. Like you're talking about trying to save a Kroger or create a Kroger or providing gaps for that type of stuff. And I think kind of Commissioner Clark highlighted that earlier with the New Orleans experience, that it gets very costly very quickly. And again, it's hunger, and a lot of us experience hunger in Macon-Bibb County at an alarming rate. Realizing that hunger is just not the access and quantity to food, it has something to do with the quality as well. But I also wanted to offer, and will be as part of coming out of these funds, is a kind of a food project policy director for us as we're trying to figure out. And I know Alex and the UDA, or excuse me, the ECD are planning on doing a lot of management for it. But to get us to a point where we're, succinctly addressing this issue, I think it's going to need like a director with intent. But yeah, I yield.
Thank you, Commissioner Watkins and Commissioner Clark. And thank you for others. I know others were working on that, and certainly we support it, and this is a resolution that we sponsored as well. So at this time, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor of passage, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously, be sent to consent agenda. We're going to move on to item J, which is appropriation of $2 million in American Rescue Act plans, funds for the provision of services to disproportionately impacted community through social determinants of health, community violence intervention, sponsored by myself and many others. Would someone like to make that motion? Got a motion by Commissioner Brunson. Is second by Commissioner Wilder. We do have a motion and second. Commissioner Jones.
Yes, sir, just a little discussion, and I appreciate the fact that you're planning on all of these items, and I'd like to be added as a sponsor, please, Janice. But it's a very measured, balanced approach. No, we're not gonna solve all the problems in one fell swoop, but I think it's very measured, very balanced, and it's a good approach to, all of these funds are with strings attached, and we gotta meet the requirements, and strings attached as they should be. They're gonna be spent as deemed meets the requirements. So I like the approach and approve of all of them.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. I appreciate that. On this particular item, just let me note that this is a item that we're going to appropriate $2 million today. If it passes, we'll come back with either a professional services contract for you or a RFP that has been answered and vetted in the near future for this item. So we'll probably see it again if the appropriation goes through today. Commissioner Lucas, you had a question?
Not a question. I certainly am in support of all of these different items. I did not call in or email to let you know that I wish to be a sponsor because I wanted to hear the discussion as to the direction that everything went in. I have been just so pleased today to hear the details on a lot of this and then the acceptance of some additional ideas on this thing. So I would certainly ask to be added as a co-sponsor on these.
Yes, ma'am. We'll note that. Appreciate it. Any other comments, questions, or concerns on this here? Commissioner Watkins?
I guess since the beginning of the announcement of the MVP program, kind of been waiting for the meat and bones of that to kind of take fruition. And to that regard, I think took a little self-initiative. I've been trying to work with the mayor and the administration on what I think to be a kind of a vital mix of our service delivery when it comes to trying to reduce gun violence, and that's what a lot of communities are calling violence interrupters. Putting boots on the ground that are trauma informed, that are providing services and in some cases counseling to victims and suspects isn't the right words, but individuals at a high risk that we perceive to be at a high risk of committing gun violence or negatively contributing to our public safety. I think the boots on the ground is an important piece of it, and I think it's a very nuanced space for folks to work in, with limited folks who are working in this space, I guess, throughout the nation with intent. One of which is Cure Violence. Is a kind of an international organization, and Advanced Peace is a national organization that's growing in this space. But because if we're going to put people on the ground in those, again, can be dangerous situations, it requires what's proven to be effective and safe for them is to be well trained, well studied, and well supported. And again, we're talking about gun violence. This stuff isn't cheap. For a lot of what they're doing. So Cure Violence locations come, again, a satellite shop. The way they manage it, 3 to 4 person teams, roughly $500,000 a year per location, is what I think a lot of communities in the state and areas are starting to do because it is effective. I think the mayor later tell us about what the work of Columbus and Augusta and some other areas. And again, they're going with one location. I think we can all be honest about Macon and realize that when it comes to violence, per capita is extremely high. And I think there's data to support that we are kind of unique from some of our counterparts if you're just looking at the region. And I would recommend, and I'm trying to recommend something that's a bit more total. So I think we should have 4 sites, way more expensive, obviously, but East Macon, with the situations that happen in East Macon are distinct from who would service it in South Macon versus West Macon. And I think, again, the difference between having a location in the Houston Avenue corridor in Bloomfield kind of necessitate us if we're really trying to make a dent in this area. I mean, in this area of problem for us. There are, outside of just the murders that happen that get highlighted, there are just as many suicides, and there are 3 times as many actual incidents that have guns where maybe no one was hurt or nobody was killed. But it is a major issue here, and I think the approach that these folks are trying to come up with, they call it a public health approach. Like I say, it's a very different approach that takes away the suppression and gun violence portion of it and deals with individuals and building better people, and getting to those trauma needs. But anyway, I think me and the mayor have gone back and forth whether or not we should be doing an RFP or a professional services agreement. Again, I'm way past ready to go. But today I'm going to hold off on the amendment outlining exactly who and where it should go to. But I did want to take this time to note where kind of the thought pattern was. And just, I guess a big point is, like it says 2 million here, but I'm going to be asking you guys, I think to do this right, that we should be more closer to 2 million per year on such an effort. And again, that's just not paying one individual or one organization. That is for an entire staff of probably 20 plus people in our county. But to date, that's just information.
Thank you, Commissioner Watkins. Like we said, this is something that'll come back before us through professional services or through an RFP. We've asked the attorneys to start drafting one, but we can always do a professional services at any point in time that we build consensus. So I think this is something needed. This is part of our MVP process. It's one tool in the tool belt. Again, from talking to our federal partners, including Austin Scott, Warnock, Ossoff, I'm missing somebody, Sanford Bishop. We believe that there's going to be some money directly addressing gun violence and violence in our community that they're appropriating funds for. I think that's another avenue that we can actually tap into. Certainly not opposed to spending more money on the MVP program. I want to make sure we spend it efficiently. We can either keep working on a professional services contract or flesh out the RFP. I do think we need to make sure we include the sheriff on this. I have spoken with the sheriff. He has some concerns about this. Some of it may just be for lack of knowledge about the particular incident or maybe conversations with other sheriffs. I think we need to reach out to him on that. All we're doing today is appropriating the money with $2 million. I'm satisfied that that's sufficient at this time, and we certainly can come back and add to it if the need arises. So we do have a motion and second, and there's no further questions. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent to consent agenda. We're going to add item K right here, which is the mowing contract, and then we'll move on to the presentation. Mr. Garlington next after that. So I'm calling this item K. This is the item that you've got submitted to you that Commissioner Watkins asked to add to the agenda, and it was approved by at least 5 here today. And this is an ordinance of the Macon-Bibb County Commission to appropriate $260,000 from the Parks and Beautification budget contractual services line item for the purpose of mowing and maintaining rights of way as provided to provide for negotiations with local vendors for such services and for lawful purposes. This basically is established a proactive right-of-way care program for identifying and selecting routes to be cut as frequently as needed to create, maintain rights of ways and to provide for further relief. As you recall, we put $1 million additional in the budget this year. This is not part of the ARP plan. It's part of our regular budget. But Commissioner Watkins would like to go ahead and allocate these $260 to specific areas I believe that he sent that he believes that need to be cut more often. We're going to oblige him. If you look on section 1 of that, you'll see a lot of those roads listed, and the next page after that. As you recall, we did an RFP that came back for a large amount for numerous areas across Macon-Bibb County. It was simply something that we could not allocate funds for whatever reason at that time. So we're going to go ahead and appropriate some of this money to make sure we start the process to coordinate also with our spraying and cutting policies that we have going on. So certainly my pleasure to co-sponsor this with Commissioner Watkins, and I think it's something that we need to do. So Commissioner Carter, did you have a question?
I just wanted to be added to it.
Okay.
It's a great idea. Thank you.
We'll add you to that. This time I'd entertain a motion to entertain your motion, Commissioner Watkins. Can I get a second? second by Commissioner Bronson. Commissioner Lucas, did you have a question? No, sir. Commissioner Bronson, you?
We'll sponsor that as
Okay.
well.
All right, we got your motion and second. Anything else need to be said, Commissioner Watkins? You good? Okay. We do have a motion and second, and no further discussion on the matter. All those in favor to add the item K that we added, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously, be sent to the consent agenda. We're going to move on to item 7, which is a presentation before going to executive session. I asked Mr. Garlington please to be brief, but you have approached the mark. Yeah, and I have one alcohol license after you, but we're good. So if you'll go ahead and let us know, we're here on a presentation for proposed North Highlands Park, presentation by Ethan Garlington, Historic Macon. Yes, sir.
Good morning again. Thank you all, and I promise I will be brief. Okay, so this won't work? All right. Okay. So I promise I'm not asking for anything. I'm just asking for your blessing on a park on property that Macon-Bibb owns. So just quickly, I'll give you a map to show you where we're talking about. So this is a proposed park on Boulevard at the intersection of Briarcliff and Boulevard. This is an area where Historic Macon has been working for about 5 years. Next slide. This zooms in just a little bit more to give you some reference. Go ahead to the next slide. So we've been working on 3 projects here, and as we talked about earlier, what we've realized is that not all neighborhoods need a full Bells Hill approach. A lot of neighborhoods, these transition neighborhoods, just need some assistance in terms of blight remediation, some public infrastructure improvements, and some, frankly, demolitions. So go to the next slide. So the first one, go ahead. We bought these 2 houses about 5 years ago. The one on the left we ended up tearing down because the condition was so bad. And as you can imagine, for an organization like us, tearing things down is not very common. But on the house on the right, go ahead. We've rehabbed it, and now it's a single-family rental house that we rent out. Next slide. And then just up the street a little bit, right on the corner of Briarcliff and Boulevard, there was a dilapidated 4-plex. That's what it looked like last week. We're working on that now. Again, that'll be 4 units that Historic Macon will own and operate. It's a tax credit project. And then finally, the park. So go to the next slide. So right here, we're proposing, this is a piece of property that Macon-Bibb County owns. We got a grant from the Community Foundation for $180,000 to build a park. So the next slide. This is the proposed draft plan that we got input from the Neighborhood Association. It's a pretty simple plan. We got with Michael Glisson a couple weeks ago just to make sure that he concurred that it's a straightforward and easily to maintain plan. Probably the most complicated and expensive piece is the basketball court. And the last slide. But one of the needs that we found in the neighborhood, this is not a great picture, but this is directly across the street from the 4-plex that we're working on. This is a very busy street, but kids play basketball in the street on this basketball goal. And so it seems like a really easy thing that we can do to put in a basketball court in this park. So again, we're just asking for your blessing for us to move ahead with this park on Boulevard. It's grant funded, and we would handle all the build out and everything with the neighborhood. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you for that brief explanation. Any questions? Commissioner Bronson.
I just want to say first and foremost, thank you so much for bringing us to the area. I, for one, going through the neighborhood, have seen the kids in the street playing basketball. Dangerous area pretty much, but overall, you guys have done an amazing job with developing that area. I am in full support of it, and I ask you guys as well to please join us on that end, ensuring that we get this done.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank Commissioner Clark.
Is this one of the properties that Macon-Bibb County, right after Brown versus Board of Education, decided to close instead of integrate? Am I making this up?
I'm not certain about that. Historically, there was a park on this property,
Yeah.
and it's since been overgrown completely. But I'm not sure about the history of it.
Okay, I don't know if that's rumor. I've always heard that about that plot of land, and just speaking to the rumor, I think we've done that twice in the last 6 months with land, and I really think it's an incredible practice this body's doing. Thank you for putting it all together so we can say that.
Sure.
Thank you. Attorney McNeil.
Oh, yeah.
You gonna remind me of something? We
Yes,
gotta
sir.
maintain it.
I just want to remind the commission that this was approved last November by the former commission, that this property was dedicated as a park, and so by state law, that's the only permissible use for this property at this time now.
Thank you. Okay, we get to a point where it's approaching 12 o'clock. Let me make a note for those at home watching this on Facebook Live. We're gonna take a vote real quickly on item 3E that we omitted, that I omitted. After we do that, we're gonna go into executive session, and I'll do that that time, but we're gonna be in executive session until approximately 1 o'clock. So, yeah, we may come back early, but I wanna let you know so we don't have a bunch of complaints on there that where they at. You'll know where we're at. We're doing business, and we'll return when we return, but it could be up to at least 1 o'clock. So you plan for at least 45 minutes to an hour. But this time I'm gonna go to 3E. That's a new alcohol beverage license for Masud 2311 DBA Exxon Food Mart located at 2311 Pioneer Avenue, Macon, Georgia. That is my motion. Can I get a second? Got a second by Commissioner Jones. This area is between the O'Reilly's and restaurant there, headed back toward Overtime and Pine On there at Eisenhower. This is a convenience store who met all the qualifications for an alcohol license. There's been no issues that I'm aware of, and they have completed the questionnaire. So we do have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. We have one no. That motion will be sent, will pass and go to the meeting next week. Now we're going to move on to executive session. Keep in mind, I did say that executive session may last 45 minutes to an hour, so if you're at home, feel free to take a break and come back and watch us. Yes, I'm sorry.
I was just trying to say something before we go, because I may not come back, because I got trying to get a point of personal privilege before we go into executive session, because I may have to leave.
How long is this going to take? 2 minutes?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
No, it's just, today we're doing a water challenge at Brookdale Warming Center, and we're expected to be there at 2 o'clock. Myself, you, and Commissioner Mayor Pro Tem Clark, and others as well are welcome. We'll be doing that water challenge today from 1 to 3 over there, and then tonight we're going to be having a special event for the residents at Brookdale Warming Center, and all of your constituents and commissioners over at Glorious Hope Baptist Church across from Brookdale at Napier. So we just want to invite folks to that. And we're having our town hall meeting at the Macon Mall on Thursday, upper level center court, at 6:30 p.m. For our MVP Stop the Violence initiative, mayor's initiative, and all of that. So just want to remind folks of that. And so thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman. Thank you for your leadership on putting that water challenge together, yourself and Commissioner Clark. I look forward to an opportunity to spend more time there today. We will have the event directly across the street at the church, and we're encouraging all of our folks in Macon-Bibb County to drop off your water, accept that challenge. Water is one of those things that we all have to have, and it's certainly a necessity, and we know that you'll do your job in accepting that challenge. At this time, we're going to move on to executive session. The executive session is for consultation with attorney or other legal counsel to discuss pending or potential litigation, settlement, claims, administrative proceedings, or other judicial actions brought about against Macon-Bibb County and all those allowed by law as published. This time, I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session. Got a motion by Commissioner Clark, second by Commissioner Tillman. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of going into executive session, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries and will be sent, and we'll be back after that for one additional item on the agenda today. Thank you. We're now in executive session. The time is 12:58. At this time, I'd entertain a motion to come out of executive session. Got a motion by Commissioner Jones, second by Commissioner Tillman. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion come out of executive session, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. We're now out of executive session. We have one item on the agenda left to complete today. At this time, I will call your attention to item 9A. This is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a management agreement for the management of the Brookdale Resource Center in the amount of $4 million payable from American Rescue Plan Act funds, sponsored by myself and various commissioners. This time I entertain a motion for that. A motion by Pro Tem Clark, second by Commissioner Tillman. This time I'll ask our attorney, Sarah Davis, to come forward and give us some information in regards to a MOU that we have for the management agreement between the Macon-Bibb County and United Way of Central Georgia, Inc. for the management of the Brookdale Center.
I just want to go over the terms of this agreement as it's written so far. The way the management of the center will work is that there will be a wholly owned subsidiary of United Way of Central Georgia who will manage the center. The subsidiary will be ran by a board composed 60% of appointees by United Way and 40% by appointees of the county. The board will oversee the operations of a management team, which will be hired at a later date. The board will hire that leadership team, approve staffing and payroll decisions, approve the annual budget, and approve improvements of more than $25,000. As compensation for these services, the county is going to agree to pay a lump sum of $4 million to the subsidiary to run the center. In addition to that, fundraising and grants will support the long-term funding of the center. Those will be handled by United Way and the subsidiary. So the subsidiary and United Way will be responsible for long-term fundraising efforts and for obtaining grants with the county's help when it's needed. Of the $4 million, 5% will be held in a fund specifically for maintenance of the center. The county will be responsible for improvements to the roof, the HVAC system, the walls, and the pipes. Beyond that, the subsidiary will be responsible for any improvements or the maintenance and operations. The services that are going to be provided by the subsidiary include the following. They will manage the daily operations of the center as a transitional facility aimed at alleviating homelessness in the community. They will provide for a food service program to provide nutritional meals to residents. They will establish and monitor a multi-phase process for residents to move toward independence and out of the center, and establish a total amount of time any one resident may reside at the center. They will provide and monitor on-site wraparound services to potentially include housing assistance, basic medical treatment, job assistance, mental health care, and workforce development for residents to assist them in moving towards independence. Those will be facilities provided on-site at the Brookdale Resource Center. If those assistances don't meet the needs of the residents, they will also provide referrals for basic health or economic services that aren't available on site. So if they need to go to a doctor's appointment, they can make referrals to doctors. Finally, they'll maintain the center property so that it remains safe and functional for residents. The term of this agreement is 5 years with an additional 5-year renewal term at the end of that 5 years. There will be a 90-day inspection period for the subsidiary to get inside the building and inspect it and make sure that this deal is feasible. Within that time, by providing 45 days notice, they're able to get out of this contract. After that 90-day period, either party may terminate this agreement upon 60 days written notice. In addition to the $4 million provided by the county has agreed to install 12 showers, add laundry facilities, upgrade the Wi-Fi, install security cameras, update the kitchen, and purchase 200 beds, mattresses, and pillows. I believe that covers all the main terms of the agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Davis, for that presentation. Commissioner Tillman, do you have a question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to support this on the contingency that within the next 30, 45 days, we have at least 1 to 2 community meetings over there. Also, I am interested, I heard those things that we're going to provide, and for those that's listening, we also need some adult tables and chairs, because a lot of those seats over there for former school kids. This is just me personally. I like to have a projector screen with a PowerPoint presentation to be able to watch movies and TVs, and for us to go and do some stuff over there as a commissioner, to have our meetings and all of that, if the sky's going to be the limit. We need to treat these folks like this is their home, and this is no different from what some of our other community centers like Buck Melton and the Family Investment Center has. And so if we're going to buy in, we all in. I think we all need to be all in. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman. Any other questions from commissioners? Mr. Jones?
Mayor, if you'll restate for the public where this $4 million is coming from.
Sure. The $4 million that we've appropriated come from the American Rescue Plan from the federal government based on the $37,932,455 we received earlier this month. Okay, thank you for that comment. This time we do have a motion and second. Appears to be no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously, be sent to the consent agenda. This does conclude our business today, but I wanted to remind each of you that we have a convenience center that will be on your next agenda for next week. We could not have that in time this time because we have an RFP pending. This has been something we've been working on for a while, so you'll have a design and you'll have a company that is selected based on the RFP and the committee that will present to you. We will not get the information until probably Friday of this next week, and we'll have that to you in time to hopefully to go out on your package to consider on the July 20th. Certainly our intent to expedite this process, and I hope you'll consider voting on that since we're going to put that on the agenda for the July 20th, and we'll go ahead and move accordingly. If there's no further business that brings us here today, this meeting is hereby adjourned.